Welcome to Phonogenics 101, a Riotboy production hosted by Jeremy Gloff. The podcast where people who love music discuss albums track by track. Please hit subscribe, and if you'd like to support this podcast, patreon.com/Jeremy Gloff or Venmo @Jeremy Gloff. And now, on to the music. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Phonogenics 101. This is our first episode of 2025. It's the year's off to a hard start for many people. Even one of our podcasters, John, is in Los Angeles. So we're thinking of you, and we look forward to you joining for Kiln House. Everybody here has been on the Fleetwood Mac podcast, but I feel like everyone here has not been here together. So I'm just going to call your name and just say where you're from and just a little bit about yourself. Jim, we'll start with you. First time I've seen you since we shared a steak in Orlando.
Yeah, that was brief, but it was fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I wish it was like 2 or 3 days, but maybe next time. I'm here in Sweetwater, Tennessee. I'm from originally in South Dakota, close to Sturgis, South Dakota. And I remember hearing Fleetwood Mac like in the Mystery to Me days, like what was that song?
Hypnotized?
What?
Hypnotized?
Yeah, Hypnotized, yes. And I didn't, I just liked it. It was something that was pretty cool, and I liked it. And, it's like way later on, during the MTV era, I started to do all this research and stuff. And wow, that's Fleetwood Mac too. That's cool. And I love that. So, and that's about it for now. So.
All right. Well, Tony.
Yes. What do you want to know?
Well, tell us where you're from, so the people that aren't watching the video version can at least match the voice to the name.
Been a Fleetwood Mac fan since I was about 7 years old, and I love talking about the band's music. I love talking about the wilderness years between 1970 and 1974. My favorite.
Yeah.
So, but I do also love the stuff from the 60s as well. So. I'm really looking forward to this.
So if you're a fan since you were 7, does that mean you're a fan since the Chain box set came out?
Yeah.
I just want to say here that I found a copy of Becca Bramlett's first album on CD. It's being shipped to me right now. So my Becca's solo CD collection is now complete. All right.
I was the youngest of 5 kids, and my sister had the Rumors album.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how yeah.
Well, also from New York State, we have Nick.
Hello. So seeing that I'm younger, I got into the band a little bit later, but I found their history to be very compelling. This album in particular is probably one of the best documented of their 17 studio albums, so there'll be a lot to discuss, and I'm looking forward to that.
All right. His second time with us, but hopefully stays for the duration. We have Sam here.
Hey, and if you didn't notice, you just picked up what is it? 846, I think.
Oh,
so sorry I didn't subscribe before. I thought I had, but
well, thank you.
It's locked in now.
That's right.
I live a little bit south on 24 from Jim down in Chattanooga.
And meet up.
Yeah, really. I used to teach up in Knoxville, so I used to pass Sweetwater.
Okay.
Up there. But anyway, I'm an educator and a recording engineer and a musician, and I first really got into Fleetwood Mac when my dad let me borrow the CD version, the original CD pressing from the 80s of them Play On, because he knew this style of guitar I play.
Is that one?
It looks like it's the American sequence.
Yep.
Yeah, with the singles on there. And I loved it, and it became sort of a journey of mine to try to find the original British pressing, because then I had read about it, and you could only, before it was re-released on CD, you could only get it on vinyl. And I don't know, it must have been like maybe around like 2012 or 11 or 10 or something, where I was able to finally get it through Discogs. And I got a couple versions of that original British pressing. One with the all black cover, and then the original. But anyway, so I love this album. I could talk about it all day, but I'll try to be concise.
Well, you guys are always saying you want to outdo the Joni Mitchell podcast, so maybe this might be the album that does it.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
I kind of already, said to myself, I'm not going to get a lot of sleep tonight, so it's all good. I'm taking a 4-day weekend. Alicia, we missed you last month. It was like the Stevie Nicks tour where Lori Perry Nicks didn't tour and Marilyn Martin was there instead. But now the original is back. How are you doing? This is the first time I've seen you since we met in person as well, I believe.
Yes. I'm doing much better. It was kind of hectic there at the beginning of November. So I'm here in the upstate of South Carolina. So we did get hit by Helene during October. So I was fortunate. I didn't have any house damage, but I didn't have power for 4 days, and then I didn't have internet for 2 or 3 weeks. So me trying to find the music and whatnot for the last time kind of made it rough. And then things were piling up at the office, and I've had some personal family issues come through. So yeah, thank you for kind of giving me a break.
We all have to do that all the time with each other.
So yeah, as far as when I'm on the later end, all of you guys finding them out during the 70s and 80s. I actually found out about the band, it was my sophomore year in college. So it was 2007. And the first album I picked up was the Chain box set from the early 90s. And after 2 or 3 weeks, I liked the disc that had the classic lineup in it, and then more specifically Stevie, and kind of took a detour into Stevie land for about 10 or so, 12 years. And the late 2010s, I started picking up kind of that side. And so I'm actually going through all these blues records for the first time. So I think I got 2 songs left on this record, but I was listening to it tonight, doing a few things. So where you guys have had 50 years, I've had
Well, it's 40.
So I'll let you guys do more talking. But
well, I'm just glad you're here. So if I call on you and you want to pass, I won't be offended. But chime in when you'd like to. And I'm Jeremy Gloff. I'm here from Tampa, Florida. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000. Thank you to everyone that subscribed to my Patreon. It's very nice when these bills come in to pay for the hosting of this or the Zoom that it's paid for. And I also do music. I just released my Greatest Hits Volume 2, actually, and had a big party in Tampa, my 50 AF album release party. So it was not only standing room only, it was no room to stand, and people had to leave. So it makes me feel good that I can still draw a little bit of a crowd. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Fleetwood Mac. I'm going to give a little bit of my journey with this album. I had, of course, big Stevie Nicks fan when I was a kid, early 80s. Rumors and the White Album were omnipresent. I went to Record Giant, our local record store, and I found Mystery to Me. And I'm like, what is this album? I never heard of this. And then I opened it, and Christine's there, but where's Stevie and Lindsay? And I fell in love with that album. That's a podcast I'm really looking forward to. Then I went to my dad's house, and I didn't see my dad a lot growing up, and he sadly passed away. But, I do cherish the memories we did have. And he's like, oh, here's an older Fleetwood Mac album, and it was Then Play On. And he put it on the stereo, and I opened up the gatefold, and there was no Christine there. I'm like, who? This is all dudes. What is this? So the versions I have of the album now, I have this box set that has the albums from 69 to 72. So I have that version. And then, like Sam was saying, I have that original 80s pressing. And then I do have the reissue from 2013. We're going to talk about all 18 songs from the reissue as well as Man of the World. So we have a lot to cover tonight. If it's starting looking late, I might keep it moving a little bit, but I think we can do this all. So I'm going to start off the podcast and say something controversial. In 1988, when I first heard this album at my dad's house, I never knew that there was a British version and there was a US version and that singles got added. I just thought the album was what it was. I don't even know if at that time, I guess it would have been 12 or 13, that I knew that there were different versions of albums. This is before the internet, and even, I had the Rolling Stone record guide. So that was kind of my Bible that I carried everywhere. There was different editions of the book, and I would buy the new ones. But to me, then Play On was that version I had, which was the US version that added Oh Well. And this might be a hot take, but I love that version of the album. I feel like having that really powerhouse single at the end of side one, this is totally a different universe, but the Pointer Sisters had an album called Breakout. And I'm So Excited was a song from the album before, but became a hit. So they re-released Breakout with a remix of I'm So Excited. And now the version of Breakout that everybody knows starts with like Jump for My Love, Automatic, I'm So Excited, the song I Need You, the Neutron Hit. So all of side one's like a powerhouse. And I never knew that there was another version. So I feel like for me, that US version's a powerhouse version that is just, to me, the ultimate version of the album. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that before we go into the song by song?
I agree with you. Even though I do love Without You and One Sunny Day, I like those songs a lot. But I'm glad that the configuration for the album that was the American configuration is my favorite one. Just because of the balance of the songs. It kind of reminds me of like what they did with the Beatles albums from like Rubber Soul, Revolver, and so forth, where you always had these different albums. And it wasn't until Pepper that they started doing just one album transatlantically.
Right.
It's an interesting phenomenon. If you come to this from the American standpoint, it's a very different experience.
Yeah. And Alicia, you were asking, so the original track list had 14 songs.
Well,
Correct? Was it 14?
I got the vinyl here, and it's 11. It's 5 on side 1 and 6 on side 2. And Oh Well, or no, not Oh Well. I think it's both. Where's Oh Well? Is it on front?
It's Oh Well 1 and 2.
Yeah, so that would have been the later US version.
Oh Well 1 and 2 are one listing on side 1, and Searching for Madge and Fighting for Madge are 2 separate on side 2.
Right. And I do think that they were always separate, but on the original UK pressing, one was on one side of the album and the other was on the other. Sam,
Yeah.
do you want to go into this at all? Because I feel like you're pretty familiar with the different configurations of the album.
Yeah. So, and I should say my first experience was the 80s CD pressing, but I probably heard it in 2007. I didn't hear it in the 80s. And when I first heard it, I agree. I think there were 2 songs that really struck me, Oh Well and Rattlesnake Shake, and they both have these monster riffs, and both of them I felt like I had heard before. I don't know if it was a past life or just maybe my dad played it when I was a kid and it kind of soaked into my being. But I really do think that version gave me the greatest impression. But then it became, as I knew that inside and out and I studied, the background as much as you could find, which there isn't a ton of information on the recording of this album because sadly Martin Birch, the engineer, passed away, and he was kind of a quieter person in general. I think that it became part of a quest for me to hear the original version and hear what the band originally intended because the US version was totally done by the US office.
Right.
in order to do
Yeah.
exactly what you said, have this powerful record that would go over in the US. And I mean, it worked, but that is not what the band had intended the album to sound like. So that's where I went with it.
Well, for the podcast, we'll be following the format of the original release and then go into the bonus tracks. Nick?
Yeah, so on the vaudeville years, I believe that Martin Birch did provide some additional commentary there. And then with the track listing, I know that the original idea was to split the writing credits pretty even, where Green would have around half the tracks, Kerwin would have half the tracks. And as the editions progressed, more and more of Kerwin's songs were removed from the track listing, so it deviated more and more from the original premise, to the point where I think he only had 3 or 4 actually by the end of it, starting with 7.
Part of the reason for that, though, is because two of the songs that were
English
on there
Rose,
were already on the American, was on what do you call
English
it?
Rose.
Rose.
English Rose, yep.
So it would have been, from the American standpoint, they would have been duplicating the.
Right, but then when they put "Oh Well" on there, they removed 2 more of Kerwin's songs. I think "When You Say in My Dream," they didn't replace it with
Right.
a Green song.
Right. All right, well, what do you guys think of the album cover? This is very Fleetwood Mac, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like,
Love it.
That's great. It's supposed to be like a early 19th or 20th century painting, and I think Mick's sister owned it. I don't know if she owned like an original or I don't think they did like replications of paintings. I can't remember the artist, but it's really cool. I think it's very English. It's very country English, kind of wild, and it fits in with that psychedelic era. That picture of a man naked on a horse, that kind of goes along with the environment at that time. So it fits the time, and kind of fits where it's from and everything. So when I saw that album cover, I said, well, and listening to the record, I said, well, I get it. It definitely fits this music.
well, that man can ride this horse right to my house. I'll say that
Yeah.
much. The inside of the cover, a picture of the dudes hanging on the beach. Very, very great. Like a totally different vibe than even the Bob Welsh years. Like there's just something different going on here. When I was a kid, it really captured my imagination. I feel like Fleetwood Mac albums are just, there's a certain kind of magic to them. And this cover is no exceptions. I feel like you can just get lost in it. It really fits, what was before this? The Mr. Wonderful. And then you have this, then you have Kiln House, then Future Games. Each one's just a world that you really can get lost in. So I even love the font. Like that, it just, everything's perfect about this package.
That looked like a heavy metal font.
Yeah, it did.
It kind of looks like that, yeah.
It was on Reprise albums, which they'd stay on through the White Album until they switched to Warner's on Rumors. Does anybody else want to say anything else about the cover?
Yeah,
I don't think that they got, what do you call for it? Approval for it at first, and the estate of the painter was upset. That's what I had heard, but or read somewhere. But obviously, it was too late.
And Sam, did you have something?
I mean, yeah, besides like hashtag workout goals, I have to say, like, the colors on there are fantastic. They're bold and striking, and even the actual disc, I remember seeing it for the first time with the Steamboat and being really drawn to that label because it looks like it's like a blues record or something from like the 30s or 40s or something. I don't know, but it just has sort of a timeless quality to the whole package. And I've got another pressing. I'm looking it up right now. I think it must have been the repressing, and the original repressing. It's all black and it has that sort of heavy metal looking font. And I remember the inside of that has a colored photo of the band. It's not a gatefold, I don't think, but it's like a distant photo. I encourage you guys to look that up.
Okay.
Because it's pretty cool.
Probably on Discogs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick.
Yeah, so there's actually an interesting story about the label change that we could probably discuss more once we get to Man of the World, because they were on another label very briefly and then they switched over to this one. I'll just say that Vernon was very upset that they switched labels and it was not his decision.
Okay. Well, just a quick history of the album. Of course, this is the first full-length album to feature Danny Kerwin. He was on Pious Bird, right, as a contributing songwriter, but that was a compilation.
English Rose as well.
Right. And Jeremy Spencer was barely on the album. I think he just plucked away at the piano a little bit. But the plan was for him to do a separate EP of more vaudevillian parody stuff. And Nick, you wanted to touch on that, so that was a good time.
Right. So he's essentially taking on various artists, including John Mayall. So it's kind of formatted as a radio show where he takes on the role of this very sleazy radio host, like talk about like the Milton Schultz show. Yeah, buy some beer. That's the voice he employs throughout the entire thing. And he announces all the bands that are playing throughout the program. I think there are 5 tracks total. You can hear all of them on the Vaudeville Years, which was a 1998 release. He goes through a bunch of surf rock, there's acid rock, and then the final track is, I think, kind of a pastiche on John Mayall, who is reportedly very displeased to hear Jeremy's impression of the song.
Do you think
Something
Go
else.
ahead, yeah.
I know there was an alternate universe where they were considering releasing the EP along with the album. Do you think that would have worked?
Yeah, so I've heard 2 different stories. One, it was going to release alongside of it. The second story was that it was going to be released shortly after it, but the label was reportedly unhappy with it. John McVie, I think in a 1987 or 1990 interview, he said that this EP was the best work that they had ever done, and he was disappointed that it had yet to be released at that point. But yeah, those were the plans, that it was going to be released to kind of offset Spencer's lack of contributions to this album, other than Oh Well Part 2.
And did Chris on Wikipedia it said that Christy McVie played piano on "Coming Your Way," but I don't hear any piano in that song.
Is it at the,
But it is.
the last half of it, the last
Yeah.
section of it?
Where the tempo changes, the
Slows
very end.
down, the blues part, the shuffle part.
Okay.
Lots of whole notes, more or less, and then she's doing some of the runs. She talked about it in a Melody Maker interview where
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
she was asked to discuss maybe a dozen or so songs, and then
Okay.
she was saying, "Oh, I have to play on this song. Did some piano
Okay.
bits here and there, that sort of thing."
Well, and Jeremy Spencer was also quoted as saying that he did not like Then Play On. He thought it was humorless, right? And too serious.
Yeah, he did say that. And then for his reasons as to why he didn't play on it, he said, I had no inspiration, couldn't think of anything new. I was just doing Elmore James, and I couldn't think of anything else. There was nothing really for me to sing about anymore. Eventually, he later did get that creative burst of energy for Kiln House, where he
Right.
probably pivoted more towards parodies, which he was still doing on stage too, but with Kerwin on board, Spencer actually was somewhat opposed to Kerwin's addition because he thought that with Kerwin coming on board, it would kind of relegate him further back and make him less relevant. And that was discussed heavily in the Vaudeville Years liner notes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I think it was Fleetwood who was really the only person who really wanted Kerwin initially.
And didn't Fleetwood say a quote? He's like, "We didn't know what we were going to do next, but sure as hell wasn't going to be Jeremy Spencer doing more Elmore James."
That's
Yeah.
correct, yes.
All right. Well, does anyone else have any thoughts about anything before we go into the track-by-track discussion of the album?
I got like chart information,
Okay.
and yes, this is the first album that Danny is very much part of. And yeah, Jeremy played sparingly on this album. Yeah, this is the first Fleetwood Mac album that wasn't recorded like live in the studio. You know, everybody plugged in, a lot of, you know, the dubbing and all that modern techniques, and it came out great. You know, they adapted to what, you know, the Beatles and all these other bands do. They do extensive studio work. Okay, charts. UK. This album was number 4 in the UK album charts, and the US 109, which ain't too bad. Singles. Oh well, number 2 in the UK, number 55. Wait a minute. Oh well,
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, number 55 in the U.S. And Green Manalishi was number 10 in the UK. That's quite a radical song. And Man of the World was number 2 in the UK. So basically, Peter Green in the UK was a well-known pop or rock star, basically a guitar god.
The Green God.
Yeah, I mean, he was like it's back in those days. The visuals you get very, you get kind of what they put in front of you. But Green was probably people would know his face and his music. And there's Albatross. Green was very like what that span. He had some incredible work. So and to go into my experience with the album, I picked this album up on vinyl in the '80s during the I was trying to fill out my Fleetwood Mac. Just it was I think I might have got this with like 3 other records. I might have got a Buckingham Nicks and this one. No, Buckingham Nicks I saw in the store. So scratch that. I think I would buy groups of albums. I'd have to order them, and they would come in, and they would mail out a note, a little postcard that your records are in, and then I go pick them up. So a lot of these things I got weren't on the shelves. So and I wanted them, and I would just order them, and then after a week or two, a few weeks, I get a postcard that such and such is in, and I had to go, the good 40-mile trip into Rapid City, South Dakota to pick them up at the record store. This music is more, I was very pleased with this record. It was more in line with the hard rock and the psychedelic music that I grew up and enjoyed. So it right away, I just, oh yes, this is great. This is great for that time. There's just no it was kind of like I enjoyed it, no matter who it was, sort of thing. It was an amazing play, and I played it tonight. This is a hell of an era for the band. I mean, just kudos. Amazing stuff. It's just an amazing era. Great music.
Well, to hear the growth from that first album, then to the albums we covered last time, the Mr. Wonderful and the compilations, and then for this to be the third album, I mean, talk about a jump. Like,
yeah, it's like a Zeppelin,
yeah,
or a Black Sabbath record or something. It just had a lot of variances and styles. It was up with the peers, the great peers of that time.
All right, any other general thoughts before we go into the specific songs?
Well, one thing that I think affected their writing is going to San Francisco and playing over there and, taking acid and falling into that scene and doing that definitely influenced the songwriting shift, because you notice that they opened up and they started, if you listen to a lot of their live shows from this time, you can see the transition from the barroom blues to this really expanded, stretched out show. So I try to keep in mind what they were doing live as a continuation of how they were playing in the studio.
Yeah, I remember reading that there were some accusations hurled at the band after Albatross that they had sold out and become commercial, but Green pushed back against that narrative because they did indeed include some blues songs in their set, but they also mixed some of the jam-oriented material, like 20-minute version of Rattlesnake Shake, Black Magic Woman, all sorts of things. So they were very varied, but they didn't completely abandon their blues roots.
And of course, it's important to know that this is the last Fleetwood Mac album to feature Peter Green.
Well, Penguin also did have him.
Yeah, Penguin and Tusk. But I mean, he's a full-fledged member of the band. He'd come back and noodle a little bit, but and I feel like his stamp stayed with the band all the way through to the end.
Yeah, if you listen to any sort of interview with Mick Fleetwood, he'll always talk about Peter Green with admiration. He's
Right,
probably the one member where Fleetwood will only have positive things to say about him.
right. All right. Well, they were a huge band. They were established, and they get this new band member, this younger kid, Danny Kerwin. And I feel like starting off the album with one of his songs was kind of a ballsy move, especially with the commercial clout that Peter Green had at the time. I remember sitting in my dad's apartment, and the needle hit the wax, and "Coming Your Way" came on, and I just loved it the first time I heard it. I feel like throughout this whole album, Mick's just having a blast, just really playing the
Yeah.
drums. I don't know if Mick ever sounded like he was having as much fun as he did on this album. I read somewhere that Peter had Danny play all the guitar parts on his song because he wanted him to be more proficient in the studio. Did anyone else read that anywhere?
Well, that was in the vaudeville years liner notes, and it was
Okay.
for a couple of songs. I think "Coming Your Way," "Although the Sun Is Shining," maybe "My Dream" as well. I don't know about "When You Say" that could also be all Danny too,
Right.
but Peter did play on things like "Crying," for example, and the Madge jams, for examples.
I would be surprised if Peter Green is not playing that counterpoint guitar on "Coming Your Way," because it's very similar to how they played it live. And there is an alternate take that's on one of the albums I have that was I can't remember. It's a CD. It's got some odds and ends on it, and it's an alternate take of "Coming Your Way." And it's live off the floor, and you can tell it's two guitar players, two
Okay.
distinct styles. But I do think that, as we further into this album, there are definitely songs where it's either only Peter Green or only Danny Kerwin on the entire song. But on this song in particular, I think this dates back to the Blue Horizon years, and that's why it was able to be included on this odds and ends that I have. This one and "Without You," and I believe, although this or not, and "One Sunny Day." Yeah, I think all of those are from the Blue Horizon era.
Yeah, so this was actually recorded the same recording session as Albatross. I think they had done this around October 6th, and they had 7 songs, that being "Coming Your Way," "One Sunny Day," like "Crying," "Without You." I think they did "Something Inside of Me" as well, and "Jigsaw Puzzle Blues." So they were pretty productive around that time.
If they had recorded it though, they must have re-recorded some of those because.
Oh yeah, they definitely re-recorded them. Yes,
because when you change the label, they own the
Masters.
yeah.
a lot of the songs had been recorded previously. "Showbiz Blues," they had done an earlier take on that as well. Some of Green's stuff were just home recordings. So this had been laying around for quite some time, almost a year, but then they redid them.
Well, I think "Coming Your Way" is a killer opening track. I mean, is Mick playing the bongos, I guess? I mean, he's just tearing into it. Danny's guitar is just heavenly. Sometimes Danny's a pretty simple lyricist, but he's effective. And I just think, then you have the tempo change with Christy McVie coming in on the piano, and that's kind of a classic, like Mick's wailing at the drums. This might be one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs of all time. And I'm a huge Danny Kerwin fan right through his solo stuff. But I love this song. What do you guys think of it?
So he's actually playing conga drums. He talked about this in an interview with Modern Drummer in 2003 on how he had acquired these fiberglass congas and how he had great pleasure in doing all these fun percussion overdubs on the album. Yeah. If you look at some of the live performances at the time, you'll notice that he has them to the right of his drum kit. He has his gong behind him, his congas to the right, and then the cowbell mounted. And he would occasionally play them on certain songs like this. "Oh Well" in particular would feature the congas as well.
Okay.
It's definitely a superior version than the one that's from Blue Horizon, than that take. And I think it's because they were able to do overbutting. They're a little bit more confident in it. Certainly Danny sounds more confident. And I agree with you. The lyrics are so spare, but we really don't need more than
we don't need more.
It's a really superior track. It's a great way to begin the album. It wouldn't have been as cold to the audience. Danny wouldn't have been as cold. The audience was already familiar with him through singles and through the stage shows. But it is a way of saying he's our new guy, and we really put trust in him to start the album. I love it.
That would have been like if they recorded an album in 2019 and like they opened with a Neil Finn song. But I guess Neil Finn's more established, so that doesn't even count.
They did that with Lindsey Buckingham in
Monday
75.
morning.
Yeah.
So, and I think that it's, this particular song too, the drum work, it comes close to not the actual drums are different because he's playing bongos here, or congas, but it sounds very stylistically similar to Bad Loser. There's some,
Yeah.
in the single guitar figure that he's playing over it. So it's a really interesting connection between the two songs.
There's definitely a thread that runs through all of Fleetwood Mac's material. And I couldn't help but joke and say, well, they didn't start with the Rick Vito song on Behind the Mask. Well,
Here's his own.
Let's go, Jim. Do you have notes on this one?
Yes. It's a rhythm masterpiece. Every band member outstanding in this. A very tribalistic sound to it. And no matter what you and I are doing, I'm coming your way is the point being made here. It's kind of like they do I'm coming your way if you're doing something, and I'm coming your way if I'm doing something, And I remember an art show on PBS may have played this, like the intro, back in the early 70s. And it was just a very, just right at and that's why I kind of like watching that show. It's like at the front, they had this cool little rhythm, it almost like Native American sounding music. And then it was a woman with, kind of with a beehive hair, and she would do her art thing. And at the end of the show, they would play it again. So it was kind of a very boring art show with a very cool intro music and outro music. And it could have been this. I looked online for it, for being an incorporated, couldn't find a thing. So, I mean, it may have been this or just something similar to this. But the era of late 60s, early 70s, PBS is kind of like 68,
Yeah.
When they started with Sesame Street and all that. And it might have been a local affiliate art show, or a national. The locals would make their own programming, but I don't know. It was kind of, and when I first heard this on the vinyl, I said, well, that kind of reminds me of something. Oh, maybe that's when it brought me back to like this art show that's not unremarkable, but a great intro and an outro at the end. So it could have been. I mean,
some things are just lost forever.
Yeah, I mean, like one song, "Safe Harbor." This little instrumental on, I can't even remember
Heroes
what
are
album. Heroes. Yeah, that I'm pretty sure that was used on a nature program at the end of the program. Fleetwood Mac, their music was.
Jim Ladd used to use "Caught in the Rain" at the end of his shows in the late 70s.
Yeah, I mean, their music lends themselves to just being used as bumper music or intro outro stuff. So,
all right. So Alicia, you never heard this song before. You put in the CD. What were your first thoughts, or digital, or whatever you played on?
Well, it was digital. I was enjoying the groove. Well, there was quite a groove. And so to me, it was a great start. It's, so I can't, trying to think of the lyric, but,
I got things to do. You move every day.
yeah.
so but I was like, okay. And I definitely noticed this was sounds bad to say, much better, but
No.
you can tell the improvement of production. I noticed it's not like the radio show sort of thing as the first album was.
Right.
So it's said, okay, now this is going to be interesting. And Yeah, it's, I have to say, as far as the horse, that doesn't fit in with anything that they had in the lyrics, does it? I don't remember seeing. So what made them decide that image to fit in with? They just liked it and then they just put it on.
Yeah, I was looking more at like the red leaves and the kind of autumnal feeling of the cover, and the kind of like old worldly, because I feel like a lot of that album is very like tapping into old spirits and kind of changing seasons, and that's kind of what I got more out of the cover.
Okay.
Mick liked it.
Yeah,
It was
Mick liked it.
definitely he was the instigator in using it. So
Probably no one gave a shit. They're like, whatever.
it's a great cover.
I guess I'm just so used to today, most people, when they do an actual picture, it usually gives some sort of representation of what you're going to be.
Right.
So it's just interesting that beyond maybe the leaves and the sun, there isn't much. So, anyways.
Well, Sam, do you have any thoughts on Coming Your Way?
Yeah, and I wanted to say that so the then play on, I believe, comes from a Shakespeare
Yep.
line, right?
Yeah,
If music is the food of love, then play on, or is that something like that?
Music be the food of love. Yeah.
So, do you all know what the original title was that it was frowned upon?
What was it? Remind me.
Sucker, was it?
No, that was the
No.
other. That was the last
Okay.
album.
other suckers.
Bread and Cunny.
Yeah, bread and cunning.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that was a little too rock star for Reprise, so they had to change it. But I think that it's a fantastic opener. I mean, I've put this album on the vinyl and sat between the speakers in the dark, and when this song comes on, it's just it's a fantastic opener. And they opened some shows with it too
rhythm.
during that time, and it's like, what a way to like settle in, because it is very live. One thing that I really love about this entire album is you have very live sounding songs, and then very orchestrated, composed songs. And this sounds like the band live off the floor. And I absolutely love the interplay between the guitar players. And then at the end,
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's a devastating.
Okay.
It's kind of in the same vein as Green Manalishi, really, with
Yeah.
the heaviness of how heavy this band could get, and having the piano in there is a brilliant idea. Playing those lower notes, it just really enforces that. I've heard Jimi Hendrix do that before on the album he was working on right before he died. He did some of that on some of those songs where you really layer that acoustic piano in there, and it gives an even heavier feeling for parts. And Kerwin has a great guitar solo. I love the song. I love the percussion that they were getting into, and I think it's just a classic opener for me.
All right. Well, then the album switches gears, and I'm gonna keep it moving, you guys, because we have like 19 more songs to cover. So sorry.
Okay. That's fine.
If anyone wants to start the Patreon outtakes version, but I have to be up at 6:30
I should
a.m.
include in that.
Closing my eyes, it slows right down and talk. I feel like we go from one form of devastation to the next. This is a really slow, really sad, very sorrowful song with some huge. Is that the timpani in there?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and Jim, we'll start with you. If you want to roll in a little bit, what you're going to say, go ahead.
Okay. On the previous song?
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be fine.
Briefly.
It was like, okay, and that outro, that very heavy outro with the piano, that is pure sex. When Christine and John and Mick and a guitarist are making runs together, and you can't distinguish the player from each other. It's just a sound that comes out. That's just sex. That's just oh my god.
Yeah, it is.
Just great stuff. Okay, that's all. That's for that. Close my eyes. A very deep, sad song by Peter Green, but in the end, very hopeful. I really like the line right at the end. and with the strength of my hands to go on feeding your smile. So Peter was probably, trying to impress a girlfriend or and trying to keep a girlfriend. And he was just saying, with my plan, I'm going to keep you, and with my words, I'm going to keep you, and that's what he was trying to get across. And so far, and like, so far, this album is definitely a great departure from the previous efforts. You just kind of knew right away that like they kind of left something behind, but they still had that blues element to them, certainly.
I mean, I feel like this is the real evolution of the blues, because I mean, you can hear in Peter's voice there's a lot of angst, like, and that's such an overused word. I feel like the word epic's also like solely overused, but these are epic freaking songs, man. I don't know what other word can really be used. Nick.
So I think, Jenny Boyd, who is Mick Fleetwood's wife, she wrote a book around 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And in that book, she explained that Green told her that the song had to do more about spirituality as opposed to a woman in particular, and how he was lamenting that he would try to share the word of God with people who he came across, but they weren't receptive to anything that he said. And this was kind of capturing the feelings that he was having at the moment of finding himself, more or less.
All right. Well, Sam, I know you got some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought that's I don't know if I ever heard that before, but that makes a lot more sense to me. It's hard for me to try to conceptualize what the lyrics are about in this song because they do seem somewhat esoteric, and so having it be a spiritual idea makes sense. I was thinking it was almost something to do with his kind of the man of the world continuation with this disillusionment for being successful, but I think that when I listened to this today, I hadn't listened to it in a while. I was just kind of floored by Green's composing abilities and the space that he uses, and he's playing a Spanish guitar, and I think there's some 6-string bass in this too. He played a 6-string bass, and it's just very well orchestrated, and it's almost as if he got to the point where he's like, what else do I even want to do anymore? I've done everything that I want to do as far as music is concerned. And if you look at his time with Fleetwood Mac, I kind of compare it to, in a way, like the history of blues. You start out with this really basic rootsy blues, and then it runs its course through psychedelica, and then you've got this really almost classical ending to it, where it gets to the point where, I mean, there's still some blues elements, but it's becomes really like classically refined in a way where he's now playing, a full natural minor scale and going outside of the normal notes that you would find in an English blues rock band. And I think that there are some other bands that kind of picked up on this style of playing. There's, a lot of English folk influence, I imagine, and that in this song and a few others that we're going to talk about later. But yeah, it's like the others have said, of course, it's definitely powerful. It's soft, and to hit you with that is the second song. It's like, wait a minute.
Oh, damn.
It definitely throws you off.
And this is the song where most of the song's minor, but then it ends on a major note, correct? Which is like a little unexpected twist.
Yeah, Picardy third, they call that.
Yeah. And there's a lot of crescendos. The song really builds. It gets really full, then it gets sparse. Do you think there's any Danny on the song, or do you think it's all Peter?
I think this is all Peter Green, and
right.
this was one of those songs that Martin Birch was referring to when he said that he thought it was odd the guitar players would come in on their own and work on their own songs. He didn't write a lot about this time period. I think he probably got drilled over his time with Iron Maiden and some of those later 70s bands and stuff when he was producing more than he was ever asked about Fleetwood Mac, unfortunately. But and he also retired pretty early. He's a great engineer. I'd love to talk about him more, but I know that's not the subject of this podcast.
And how long did he stay with Fleetwood Mac as engineer? He engineered Mystery to Me, didn't he? All the way.
That was the last one he did.
Yeah.
It was the last one. And then when they moved to America and the relationship between him and Christine broke down, and he went back to his wife and they moved to America. So that was it.
Yeah, they went with Bob Hughes for Heroes Are Hard to Find, and then Keith Olsen, and then, of course, Ken Kelly after
The
that.
rest is history.
Exactly, yes.
Well, I got some thoughts about this song. I remember listening to it, first getting this album when I was about 12 or 13. And, back then, this was a while ago, the rock that we heard or the rock and roll that we heard from this era would have been Zeppelin. It would have been things like that. And it was kind of, when I heard this, it was definitely unexpected. The classical elements were very surprising to me. At the same time, it made so much sense. It felt like it belonged. Mm-hmm. Like it felt like it was really setting the mood for the record, and that this does not feel like, even though stylistically it's so different than Coming Your Way, it doesn't feel like you're veering away from it.
No.
It's not like Over and Over in the Ledge, right? From the Tusk album. It's not like that. This feels like it's all part of a piece. And as Sam had mentioned, the various elements that come through here, this one does have a kind of an English folk meets blues kind of thing going on there with classical elements. Whereas, some of the Madge jams definitely seem to be influenced by San Francisco jam music like Grateful Dead and stuff. But this was definitely one of those pieces where I felt like it was blues the way Peter Green saw it at that time.
Right.
Which meant bringing in all kinds of other music, including possibly Vaughan Williams, that kind of thing. So,
all right. Any other thoughts on Closing My Eyes? Well, I sure miss that U.S. version because I feel like going into Showbiz Blues next is just fucking killer. But that's not what happened on the original version. So we move on to Fighting for Madge, which is the first of two jams. Do you think they were foreshadowing Madonna? Like they were fighting for Madonna? No? Not that Madge? Okay. Well, first they're fighting for her, then they're searching for her.
Oh, no, it's searching first and then fighting on the original album.
No, that's not. You have the U.S. one, Jim. That's the later one. The original had the.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, they flip them. They flip them and Madge was, by the way, according to Mick's book, she was kind of well, she was a lesbian. She was really kind of butch and big, and she used to follow them around to all their shows. So it was a tribute for Madge. So it was not was not a Madonna-esque tribute at all.
Do you feel like it makes more sense to talk about the two jams together, or do you think they're individual?
I think you could cover them both now.
Yeah.
They're from the same jam. I think there was a 16 or 17-minute jam. Yeah, exactly.
So on the version Jim has, of course, the songs are resequenced on side two right next to each other.
What the hell is that? There it is.
And even then, I think the resequencing that the American version does is better.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, it's just like it has more momentum. I love having them back to back like that on the American version. I think separating them is a little bit too chaotic, or it just feels too it feels too eclectic. They're just dropping too many styles in. It was nice to have that long period of jamming on the side two.
I mean, the first one, the Fighting for Madge, is a 2 minutes and some change, and then the second one's pretty long, right? And the second one has like an orchestra break, mixed talking. They fade out, they fade in. Madge must have been something else.
Is that Mick talking or is that Danny?
Oh, is it Danny? I just always thought it was
Danny.
It's Danny.
Oh, the yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
He was talking to me, you guys. Um, I always love these songs, though. I mean, talk about Mick and John being in the pocket and having the time of their lives. My
Oh,
God.
Lord.
I mean, they're
They
just,
really do nail it to the wall here.
you can feel the heat. And with some of Mick's shuffle drum, you can almost hear, like, where he went with Go Your Own Way and some of the weird, rhythmic choices he'd sometimes throw into, even
It's
like
his
over and
backbeat.
over. Yeah.
Backbeating. Yeah.
That signature Mick and John sound. Sam, what are your thoughts on the Madge pieces?
Has anyone else ever read that it originated? They called it Madge because jam backwards, MAG, is Madge, and that was where it originated. And then, of course, they had the fan as well. But that's I read that. It might have been in the Christopher Hort book or something. But that makes sense too because they are jams and backwards MAG is Madge. But I was just wondering if anybody else saw that somewhere. And actually, they Green attributed both songs, both cuts, one to McVie and one to Fleetwood, so they could make some money on the record as songwriters.
Right. Okay.
Which is pretty cool. But I actually, I learned Peter Green's guitar part for Fighting for Madge, and I still can't play it as fast as him, but I think it's some of his most brilliant technical playing that's ever been recorded, as far as like the speed and the picking technique and the cleanliness of what he's doing. I mean, it really is something. And the precisity of that's a word, preciseness of the bends. I mean, and the vibrato, and like I could talk all day about the guitar playing here, and really like because I've listened to this stuff a lot and the live recordings and things like this, and this was part of the 25-minute rattlesnake shake. They would go into the Madge jams, and then they would go into Underway, and then they would bring it back. And I think, to me, like, it's very obvious which guitar player is which, and
Yes.
and who is the master and who is the student. It's very evident on these jams. And I'm not taking anything away from Danny Kerr when he was younger and he hadn't played as much, but I mean, Peter Green, if you played with John Mayall in the 60s, you were one of the best blues rock guitar players out there, I mean, bar none. So I just can't say enough about, I mean, the rhythm section is, like people have already said, is incredible. And when they cut out and they go into that, I also read somewhere, it might have been on the forums, that they thought that maybe that was Christine playing the mellotron on that orchestrated part. It's not.
And I know this only because Christine has gone on record as saying that she hates those intrusions.
Yes.
Oh,
I was about to mention that. So
Yeah,
I have
she
the quote
hated
from
those
Melody Maker.
intrusions. She didn't understand why they were doing them, but I loved them.
So do you think it could have been somebody else playing the mellotron?
Oh, I think that they spliced in. That's like early sampling, I think.
Yes.
Well, that's what I always thought, but I could never find what it was sampled from.
I think they actually spliced in Vaughn Williams, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. But it's that's just them screwing around with the studio.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be interesting to know. I mean, like sampling, of course, you could do then as well, but it would be interesting to know how that came about. But what's interesting as well is on the vaudeville years, they have the uncut version of this entire jam, and you can see, if you compare that to the version on the record, you can see what they've done to the guitars. They've added tape delay, they've added reverb, they've added some even distortion, a little bit more distortion to the guitars and stuff. So they really mixed the hell out of this album. So we don't know what it sounded like when they cut it versus what they've done to it, after they mixed it. But this song in particular, you can compare it, and I think they did a lot of cool stuff in the studio on this record too.
I think it's interesting because Albatross, of course, inspired Here Comes the Sun, right? Wasn't that the thing? But
No,
I feel like
it was Sun King.
Oh, Sun King. Okay. I'm not a Beatles fan. But I feel like I feel like this might have had a little Sgt. Pepper influence with all the studio trickery and stuff on this one. Nick.
Yeah, so back probably in 2013, I could be wrong about the date. I think some people on the ledge were trying to figure out the tape as to what was inserted for the song, and they reached out to a couple of classical music organizations. It could have been the Vaughan Williams Society, and some of those people have to be big Fleetwood Mac fans, but they were unable still to find any sort of material that matched what was included in this song. And I actually do have the quote from McVie where she was saying that she enjoyed 90% of the album, but the one thing she didn't like was the slice of classical music, something like Brahms played backwards that comes in the middle of a jam session. I didn't see the point of that. It puzzled me, but that's the only thing I didn't like. I find that quote rather amusing, but it's the one thing on the album, as she said, that didn't really appeal to her. So it certainly wasn't her playing the mellotron.
So
yes.
So now we need to take that recording and reverse it and see what it sounds like, played the other way around.
Right.
Maybe it is Brahms backwards.
Yeah, they might not.
There's a guitar going over one part of it too.
Yeah.
It's probably layered in. Like
Yeah.
they like the pizzicato guitar or whatever. It's like, which is so lovely. And they must have really had a clear idea of the effects they wanted for this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Nick, did you have more or is your hand still up?
I just forgot to lower it. That's all. I'm all good.
Jim or Alicia, do you guys have anything you want to add?
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Ready for me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to do like Searching for Madge and then go to the other one, the next one. Nearly 7 minutes of jamming, band jamming fun. Like you were discussing about the instrumental stuff, the orchestrated stuff. No one seems to know where the orchestra part comes from. Some people say it came from a recorded music library that the movie industry uses, and mixed drum work on this is so epic. And John McVie is given the writing credit for this, which was discussed. Fighting for Madge, like the first Mad, lots of band energy here. I have a feeling that other bands picked through these jams for material. Mick Fleetwood got the songwriting credit for this.
All right. Any other thoughts on Madge?
The only other thing I had read somewhere, but it could be wrong, is that the other instrumental on side one of the, what's it called again?
Underway.
That was also part of this jam session. Is that correct?
I never heard that. It could have been.
What part did you say it was?
Underway was also part of the Madge jam session.
I think they were distinct.
Yeah,
they might have been tracks.
Yeah, they might have been from the same day. Maybe.
Okay, but they're not the same. Okay, got it.
Yeah, Green had played around with that riff for a while and continue to do so. We could talk about it later once we get to it.
Well, if Jeremy Spencer would have been on the album and he wanted to play tribute to their lesbian friend, it would have been called Searching for Vag.
Okay.
All right.
And you want to invite this man to the next podcast. There you go.
Well, there goes the Patreon subscribers. Okay. Moving on, a song which had already appeared on the Christine Perfect solo album. And that's where I heard the song first, because this version was not on my US version, right? Alicia, did you recognize this song from Christine McVie? When You Say?
I thought it sounded familiar, but I was like, it did not dawn on me it was Christine McVie or anything.
Yeah, she covered it on her solo album. Then Danny Kerwin actually recorded his version.
Oh, okay.
Well, they had recorded it by that point,
right.
But obviously she was familiar with the material. So the story, or the sequence, I should say, is that she won the Melody Maker Award for, I think, Best Female Vocalist in 1968. 1969, she was inundated with a bunch of requests, but she declined most of them. And then I think the next week, the publication reported that she was in the studio for a Danny Kerwin produced track and that the single would be forthcoming. And this was that song, When You Say. It completely flopped with her. And the band actually considered releasing it as a follow up, I think, to Man of the World. But then I think Green changed his mind, wanted Oh Well to be released instead. The band bet him, I think, £5 that it wouldn't chart, but he was incorrect, or they were incorrect, I should say.
I feel like there's times when Danny edges a little close to being a little trite sometimes. Yes. I feel like this song edges a little closer than other ones on the album, but I still like it. Does anyone have a preference between the Fleetwood Mac version and the Christine Perfect version?
I think Christine's is slightly better only because of the orchestration, makes it a little more interesting, but both versions and both the song itself, I think, is a stinker. It's one of the only thing on this album that I really, really think shouldn't have been on it.
That's why I liked my version, because it didn't. Oh no, it was on there. It was on the US one. La 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 la. Tim, I know you got some notes on this one.
Okay, Danny's voice blends well with the guitar work. A very sweet love song. A great blend of acoustic and electric guitars. Christine Perfect covered this song also. Like I'm saying, was Christine's released on first? Then
no, so this came out first.
This was first. Okay, all right. Well, I like both versions. This version is the best one to me.
Okay.
It's just something about the original idea and the concept come from from Danny that really comes across with it. But Christine's is fine. It's great too.
Sam, I'm curious what you think of this one.
I mean, I could see this one being a little repetitive too. When I was listening to it today, I looked down at the time and it was, I think, at 4 minutes.
Right.
And not much had happened. It seems almost, I don't know, maybe he was trying to write a certain way or something, but I do remember one time, quick story about this. I was with my brother and a friend of mine from college, and we were driving up to Michigan to go to a race or something up there, and I played this album front to back in the car, and I remember when this song came on, my friend was just like, what the hell are we listening to? Because you're going like all over the place. You just had a jam and then now you're back into this folksy world, and it's definitely Danny Kerwin's style, and it's beautifully laid out. The guitar work's awesome and everything, but it could have been one where maybe he grabbed some lyrics from a poem and maybe it would have elevated it a bit, because there's not much going on lyrically, so I can't really defend it too much there.
Nick?
Yeah, Kerwin is frequently criticized for being a somewhat poor lyricist. I'm not sure if he really enjoyed writing lyrics, probably more into raging and playing guitar than writing lyrics, more of an afterthought, similar to Lindsay. Lyrics would come last for a lot of his songs, and you said in one interview that lyrics are of the least importance for my songs. So this is pretty much more or less ground zero for the criticism of Kerwin's lyricism, because like everyone was saying, there's nothing there really. It goes way too long. Really would have benefited from some collaboration with Green or pulling from a poem. Green didn't really work with Kerwin on too many things other than like crying, and kind of left Kerwin to his own devices. But I think that he would have benefited a bit from having that mentor there.
Right.
But they didn't really get along in the studio. That's what I was reading in the Vaudeville Years liner notes, how Kerwin would kind of bully Green a little bit in the studio. Green wouldn't want to be a part of that. I think Kerwin said I was a bit temperamental at the time, you see, in one later interview in the 1990s. So a little bit difficult to get along with. Bob Welch would later attest to this as well.
Yes, he would.
Well, I don't, it's not the, even though the lyrics are unimpressive, it's like I think you had mentioned this earlier, Jeremy, with, coming your way. The lyrics are not great there either, and they're not great in Tell Me All the Things You Do, and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Those
matter on
songs
those
really
ones.
innovate and they really go somewhere. The problem is the song. It just goes on in this kind of like,
If it was a short and sweet love song, I'd actually love it. Like, cause I like the song. I like the melody. I don't mind the words, but like he keeps saying it. Like he keeps saying it. And like Sam said, like it's like, oh, you're at the 4 minute mark now. Like this could have been a great 2.5 minute song.
And Christine's is closer to that, which is probably why I like it a little bit more.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, any other thoughts on When You Say? All right. Now we're moving into. I liked this song when it was track 3 on the American version, but it's bumped back a little bit. Showbiz Blues. He has some killer tambourine. I feel like this is Green just really evolving with the songwriting and being more, because he's just as tortured and personal as ever. But you know, I feel like this is kind of the flip side of Man of the World, where he's talking about struggles with the showbiz. But this one's not sad or melancholy. This is, I don't know what's the word. It's not rage. It's not spirited, but it's
Jaded.
jaded. Yeah, jaded.
the
Okay.
lyrics and the style of the song and the delivery of the song are completely opposite of what the lyrics are talking about. It's so fascinating because it's really the song kind of gets you going, but if you listen to what the words are, it's really quite harsh.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that. It's kind of it's an interesting twist. The thing I wanted to notice about the song was the slide guitar. And it really just reminded me that the Green is also a really great slide player.
Right.
And
Right.
that, we don't really talk about his slide playing much because we usually save that for Jeremy Spencer or whatever. But here, the slide playing is
It's
really
great.
strong.
And I love that they made the production choice to not do a full drum kit on it. They just stick to the tambourine. And I think that actually adds a power to the song and a kind of like a rawness that works. Alicia, did this one stick out at you at all?
You're talking the blue
The Showbiz Blues.
Yes. Yes, for me, I was doing the playlist of all 19 tracks back to back. And I thought it was really interesting for my playlist. It was fast, slow, there for the first couple. And so I thought it was just really interesting. It was more of it's kind of like get you going and then really
Yeah.
pause and make you think. So this was one of those that was like, yeah, okay. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's a good jam.
I feel like his Green slide playing, especially at the end, like he just tears it up. Jim, you got some notes?
Yes, this resembles the previous work by Fleetwood Mac more than any other song on this album. A nice rambling run through. The lyrics are a bit jaded as others on this album. It's nice. It's a very nice. It fits in with the other records. It kind of connects the eras together.
Yeah.
And it's a nice little run through. It's nice to listen to. Kind of a snarky little song.
And that's kind of like why I feel like a broken record, but like I loved the, closing my eyes going to the showbiz because it's just one emotion strong right into the next. And I just felt like that was such a strong sequence. Sam, what do you think of Showbiz Blues?
And that's a good point because maybe that's why I always kind of thought Closing My Eyes had something to do with his fame disillusionment because on the first version that I heard, that was the sequence.
Right.
But here you get that separation and since I've listened to this version so many times since then, I don't really get that same feeling. But So I've got this cutout from NME when the album was about to be released. I bought it like years ago on eBay, and it's Peter Green going through all the songs and
Oh,
talking about them. And the funny thing is what he said about Peter Green said about actually the last song we talked about, When You Say. He said, this is the one of Danny's I wanted as a single when I first heard it, said Peter. It's one of the best he's ever done.
oh shit. Well, okay.
So he had room to grow. So there you go. But Showbiz Blues is awesome, and a lot of times I think it gets compared to Buka White, who is an old bluesman that played like a resonator with a slide, and that's kind of what I've read this song get compared to a lot. But in this little article, they made a good point that this is the song that's really, tying you back to Mr. Wonderful. And I think somebody had kind of mentioned that, but it's really like one of the few pure, I mean, it might be the only pure blues on here besides Without You is a blues, minor blues. But of the new stuff that they recorded specifically for this album, I think that's the only blues number, and definitely the only blues number that Green recorded. But I think it's cool, and it fits in there perfectly, and it shows Green's range of guitar playing abilities.
And even though it is a throwback to the other albums, I still feel like it's a growth. Like there's definitely an evolution in his songwriting and the production. I just think it's a great track. Any other thoughts on Showbiz Blues?
Sure, I'll chime in quickly.
Yeah.
So the liner notes of what was it? The vaudeville years. I think that the working title of this was "Do You Give a Damn for Me?" And it was originally cut alongside "Man of the World" around that time in New York. But then around June, Green did another recording of it, and there were some additional overdubs. He kind of did a different approach with the slide guitar. I think Martin Selmans was saying that he actually preferred the original take more because there were some further intricacies in the guitar playing that he thought was lost in the re-recording. But it's a nice up-tempo number that serves as a cool palate cleanser to When You Say. And also, I'd like to see the NME articles. So, Sam, if you could maybe send that to me through the direct message or email it to me, I would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah. Send it to me too.
Yeah, definitely. Is it Vaudeville Years? I think my dad has my copy of Vaudeville Years. Is Vaudeville Years where they've got a bunch of takes of this song, or is that the actual Showbiz Blues outtakes album? Do you guys know?
Let me take a look. I'll go right back and look.
Because there were two albums, the Vaudeville Years, and then what was the other one? The something else years.
Wasn't it Showbiz Blues?
Showbiz Year? Okay.
Yeah. But one of those has like 3, 4, 5 or different takes of this over the time that Green had been working on it. So I'm going to revisit that and actually check it out and see which one he said that he
I can't help but feel a little triggered because somebody in the YouTube comments is like, you guys missed the boat by not talking about the 20 versions of this song. I'm like, you missed the boat because this podcast is about discussing albums track by track, not the outtakes. So if you want to donate to my Patreon, I'll do the outtake podcast and quit my job. Oh, Tony's taking a look. Well, any other thoughts on Showbiz Blues while Tony's perusing the track list?
I think we've done a good job talking about all of the alternate takes on this podcast.
There are not enough. There's only one take of it on the Vaudeville Years.
Right. Okay.
So it's got to be one of the other recordings you've got.
All right. Well, we're moving to another instrumental, Underway. And who is this a Peter Green composition?
It is, yes.
Yep. And even though Peter did write this one, it did kind of remind me of some of the instrumentals we get from the Fleetwood Mac albums that would be forthcoming in the next few years.
This is the best. I mean, this is a beautiful instrumental, and you can tell that he was really listening to a lot of Hendrix.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
It's got that fluidness. It's got the jazz there, but then of course you've got that wonderful Mick Fleetwood's kind of floating swing that he's got on it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece. Beautiful.
Jim, you got some notes?
Yes, a very nice, relaxing instrumental. The band is, I read somewhere, the band is given the songwriting credit here.
Not in
So
this
I
song.
may be wrong.
Oh,
Like sometimes they just give it to Fleetwood Mac. I don't know. Uh, nice work by Mick Fleetwood and John McVie. They're very prominent on this song. They're really, I mean, they just add the doom doom. Uh, just a great atmospheric song.
All right. Anybody else want to touch on this one?
Yeah, I'm right there with Tony. I hear Hendrix influence all day on this, and
Yeah.
you can tell it's something that because this was one of those songs that was from a jam and born from a live setting with the band just setting up and press and record. You can tell this was a piece that Green had been working on and
Right.
kind of and fleshing out to be able to pull it off so well live like that. It's great. And really to me, it evokes the ocean with the crashing of the cymbals and things like that. And I read somewhere that underway has something to do with like when a boat leaves a dock or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
But John McVie on here to me is really jumps out. His bass playing. I mean, I think it's like the whole thing is one chord technically, but his bass playing keeps everything moving and grooving. So I didn't want to be cliche there, but too bad.
it
too bad.
works.
Yeah.
It works. It really gets at the cross pollination here of the rock world at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
Santana was listening to Fleetwood Mac, but also going to their sound checks. He was learning a lot of licks from Peter Green, but we're hearing Peter Green learning a lot from the Grateful Dead, from
Good. Yeah.
Hendrix. I mean, it's a real beautiful time. You can tell that all these bands were kind of influencing each other.
Right. All right. Last call on Underway. Go ahead, Nick.
All right, so yeah, I actually did pull up the Rolling Stone interview where he talks a little about Underway. He said, I didn't write it at all. It was spontaneously composed by the whole lot of us, just playing in the studio, recording whatever we came up with. It's what I used to play before I had my problems. But he still did receive the writing credit nonetheless, but he made sure to give the proper dues to Fleetwood and John in the interview. So there is truth to it, yes.
Okay. Sounds like what I said.
Yes, it is.
A little bit.
A little bit, yes.
All right. Well, we are moving into the sunny part of the album. I guess Danny Kerwin wanted to write about the sun a lot because we have next One Sunny Day, which is kind of a bit of a shuffle, I guess you could call it, or what would you call this?
It's a shuffle.
A shuffle. Yeah, a little bit of distorted guitar. A little bluesier. I feel like Danny gets a really strong vocal here. I really like this song.
It's a really heavy tune.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, it's so heavy that it kind of sticks out. You know what I mean? It really sticks out, and it feels, even though it's got a lot of blues in it, it feels very rock to me.
Yeah.
Very Cream. Sounds like Cream a little bit.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, that exactly. Cream, and then the harmonica in there is really cool too.
Who do you think played that? Was that Green?
I think it was. Yeah, this goes back to the Blue Horizon days, and I think that there's an outtake. There's a guy, is it Rich Orlando, who has a blog? Has anybody seen that blog before? Really focuses on the Peter Green era, and there's some outtake of Danny Kerwin playing guitar and Peter Green playing harmonica, and I think this is one of them. It's just like an apartment recording.
Cool.
All right, Jim, do you have some notes on this one?
Yes. It rivals anything Cream or Led Zeppelin ever did. A full, complete song. I never ever heard this on the radio, and I feel it could have been a good, deep track single. I mean, like on progressive rock stations or deep track it's just a great thing to listen to. The lead guitar on this is so yummy. Just great sounding guitar work all the way through. Just a nice little song. Nice, a lot of imagery here. The one sunny day. I mean, just it's it's a good car radio song type thing. It it could have been a single in a minor way, but it's a good song. It's should be heard more, but that's the way it is.
So Sam, when you finally tracked down those UK editions of the album, this is one of the songs that you probably discovered here, right? What did you think of it the first time you heard it?
I was like, why didn't they play this live ever? That
Right.
I mean, it's such a like burn the house down, kick the door in kind of song, and like, it's always that riff has always stuck out to me, and the two guitars interplaying together. It's really kind of a bummer that they never did play this live, and I don't know why they didn't, because it would have been pretty cool to even stretch it out.
There were so many great tunes back then too that they just didn't even have time to like or space to like feature them.
Right.
There's this. I mean, I don't think that there isn't a studio recording, at least in the early lineups, of Only You. Right, and that's a great tune.
They I think that the only thing close, they might have played it at BBC. Maybe
They played it also in the Boston Tea Party, I think.
Mhm.
One of the Boston Tea Party recordings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they didn't really ever. I mean, that would have been a great piece to like have on record,
Yeah. All right. Well, would this have been the end of side one on the vinyl, where the vinyl flips over?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
So we're going from One Sunny Day to Although the Sun is Shining. So we're still talking about the sun. This song starts off very dramatic, and then it kind of goes to a very like sing-songy Kerwin chorus that reminds me kind of his solo albums. Bordering almost on the trite side for a minute, but then he kind of like reels it back with those great verses. What do you guys think of this one?
I love it.
Love it.
I love it. I think it's not like When You Say. I mean, here this strikes me as really beautiful, subtle, very sophisticated without being complicated.
Who's playing the classical guitar solo? Is that Kerwin?
I think it's Danny Kerwin.
Yeah.
I mean, everything on this song sounds so very orchestrated.
It's beautiful though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds like part playing instead of improvised. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even though the chorus is a little bit cheesy, I think that kind of, it kind of goes with the lyrics and stuff, and I think it works because the song keeps moving. It doesn't stay in the same groove. So, I love the harmonies. I love his voice on it.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I think it reminds me, it doesn't sound the same, but it sounds like it could be in the same world as Summertime and, the jazz standard.
Right.
It's very spooky, and it's got a certain atmosphere to it. And actually, interestingly enough, it was something that Danny had written before Fleetwood Mac, actually.
During the Boiler House days?
Yeah. But, it's not a stage number, so he wouldn't have played it live or anything like that. But I like it a lot. I think it's one of my favorite songs that he's ever written.
Yeah,
I
Jim,
agree with that.
I'll go ahead, Nick. No, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so I think this was one of the first songs that they recorded for the album. I mean, when they started the sessions proper in April, obviously they had done a few other sessions before that, kind of demoing certain songs. But I think this was one that was mentioned where Kerwin did all the guitars and the vaudeville years liner notes. And it's one of my favorites too. I think he did a wonderful job with it. It's one of the three songs that I think of his that lasted for all the editions because, like I mentioned earlier, they kept subtracting more and more
Right.
Kerwin songs. But it was this one, pretty sure, like Crying and then Coming Your Way. Those are the three constant fixtures of the Kerwin compositions that would be on every single edition.
And I really feel at his best. I mean, he'll never be Peter Green, but I feel like he held his own next to Peter Green at his best.
Yeah.
Bud Scopa liked him, I think, more than that critic. Bud Scopa liked him more than all the other ones.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, that really saw him as the spectacular force behind Fleetwood Mac.
I mean, as we get into some of the albums we're about to tackle in the future months, I probably listen to those Danny Kerwin songs more than any of the Peter Green songs, to be honest with you. I'm a big Danny fan. Jim, what were your notes on this one?
Yes, a very simple, visually heartfelt song. A nice job of blending Danny's vocal harmonies together. The acoustic guitar work on this album is outstanding. It's a nice little piece. It's memorable. It's kind of like, everybody's kind of felt this way. Although the sun is shining, there's something else that's just a disaster, And you got to say, well, maybe the sound will make me feel better. That's kind of the point here.
It's kind of funny. I don't know if you guys remember this title from the Elmore James title, but this opens up with side 2 opens with Although the Sun is Shining, which sounds as if it should be Elmore James, but decidedly isn't.
So, Alicia, I know you kind of want to observe more and not get put on the spot as much for this album, but was there anything from this whole section that moved you at all?
I would say these two songs were probably the highlights. I mean, I've heard Oh Well because Lindsay did Oh Well in concerts. And,
Right.
And then him and Stevie did the Green.
Green Man Alicia, right?
Thank you. I can't ever say it. But I remember seeing a video of them doing that, and that was really interesting. But I'll save my comment for that when we get there. But these two songs really stuck out. And I think I know it has something to do with the fact that last week my family, we buried my grandfather. So this was kind of, I see.
Cathartic.
Yeah, the heartache. It's kind of trying to find the sun, the good things, and move forward. Finding friends, which is what the last one was about. So that was kind of what struck me, with these.
All right. Any other thoughts on Although the Sun is Shining? All right. Well, we're switching gears a little bit. I know a guy. His name is Nick. Rattlesnake's Sake, a song about playing with yourself, jerking away the blues.
Yeah.
That's another reason we need to end this podcast by midnight. I'm just kidding. Sam, let's have you start off this one.
So, yeah, this was one of the songs that when I heard it the first time, I swore I had heard it before with that riff in the middle section. It's just indescribable. Some of the memories that conjures up from the first time I heard it. I mean, I remember exactly where I was. And the funny thing is, if you've ever been out and about, like at bars or wherever, and they've got the jukebox, the jukebox where you it's digital.
Oh, Megatut? Yeah.
And you can pay like an extra $1 to skip the entire line. So funny enough, when I was living back in Toledo, Ohio, my hometown, or if I would go to visit and I'd go out and meet people at the bars and stuff, they had the Boston version of Rattlesnake Shake, which is the 25-minute version.
Oh,
put a buck or two in,
Oh,
skip the
geez.
entire line, and everybody's going to be listening to Peter Green and company for 25 minutes. You're welcome. So that's my little story about this song, but it is kind of funny what they have here. If you're thinking around now that Fleetwood Mac have lost their bite, stand back for Rattlesnake Shake, which is to be released as a single in America and will be remembered from the Mac's last concert tour. The lyric about a malfunction not mentioned in the best circles is set to mean distorted guitar that snaps and snarls with all the fury of a Ford Mustang,
Well-
with added effect from the dubbed-on hiss of a rattlesnake. Peter wrote it. So that sums it up for me. I mean, if you really are listening, like, I think that he overdubbed some 6-string bass, and there's like some intricate layering of guitars and stuff. You could tell they really went to town. And I wish I could hear the extended version because it has a fade out. I'm interested to hear, maybe it fell apart right after that. I don't know,
Right.
but it could have gone on for another 5 minutes. I don't know.
I mean, years before Cyndi Lauper had She Bop, we had Rattlesnake Shake, which was also covered on Mick Fleetwood's Visitor album, wasn't it? Or am I imagining things?
Yeah.
Yep. And who sang the vocals on it? Does anyone remember?
Peter Green.
Peter, right? Okay. Yeah, he went down to, it was recorded in Africa, right? You know we're going to have a Visitor podcast someday.
We have to.
We
yes.
have to.
Pretty good record.
That's
I
not a
love
bad
this-
record.
I love Rattlesnake Shake on Then Play On. I think it's beautifully done. I love the overdubs on it. I love the break right after the first verse with the guitar, with that really kind of crunchy guitar going
Yeah.
on. And then I love the bass when it breaks it up, where the doodle-doom, doodle-doom, and then it kind of goes. I mean, I just love that. I've always liked the live versions with Green. I've never liked the song in any other configuration. I've never liked when Welsh did it.
Oh, no.
I've
no.
never liked it when Rick Vito does it, and Steven Tyler sings the vocal. No one does the song well except Peter Green with the band, and it's the only time I've ever liked it.
And, I think Fleetwood Mac, as humans, I think have a raunchy sense of humor. Like, you can see it just by the album covers, right through the cover of Rumors with Nick having the balls on. So I feel like this band kind of is just as revealing as some of the more emotional stuff as to who they are in a different way. And I love that. And I mean, talk about being locked into a groove. The recording on this is so heavy, mixed toms, the bass locked right in. It's the magic of the band in this incarnation. And what a nasty Jerking Away the Blues. What a nasty song. And I'm totally here for it. I freaking love Rattlesnake Shake. Nick.
Yes, so obviously there are a lot of comparisons to this song and Black Dog. So when Fleetwood redid this song for The Visitor, he actually did overdubs at Jimmy Page's recording studio, and I'm pretty sure that's where Green recorded his vocals and rhythm guitar. And I probably listened to this Visitor version more than the version found on Then Play On, believe it or not. I love the extra orchestration with the cellos, the extra ensemble vocals, the percussion. I almost convinced one of my bands to play the song live. I was their percussionist at the time. It was just an excuse for me to play a lot of maracas, but we never ended up doing it. So it's a little fun aside.
If your band did the song, would they be like, I know a guy, his name is Nick?
I was going to ask them to do that. Yes, that was the plan.
Oh, God.
Becoming a True Confessions podcast.
Jeez. Make sure to subscribe, everybody. No,
It does get compared to Black Dog a lot, but that riff that I hear, that da 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 da, it's, to me, that's like a very, very slowed down Chuck Berry riff, or like Route 66, the intro to Route 66. Da 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 da. Like, it's got that kind of jaunty old school rock and roll to it, but it's extremely slowed down and grungy and filtered through the blues.
Yeah, I never thought of Black Dog for this song. Even now, to me, it's two different things. Jim, did you do your notes already?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the best song about masturbation ever. Such a powerful, epic jam that couldn't be a single, and everyone knows why. The subject matter, and I really love the Playboy After Night Dark. Oh shoot, Playboy After Dark live version. I just keep watching it, and we go through these, and I love. It's just there's so much double entendre and irony to it. Seeing the Playboy Club, and they're talking about the subject matter here. It's just, and the girls were dancing to it, and they. Well, I didn't know the song was about this, so it was just cool.
And how could Jeremy Spencer say there's no humor on this album?
There is humor on this record.
Yeah, there's humor.
It's dark humor and like tongue in cheek and cheeky humor. It's in here.
Yep. Nick.
So I think I was misremembering. I think it was more so "Oh Well" that was compared to Black Dog, but the age connection is still there. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
got
that
it.
makes sense.
Just want to clarify quickly.
With that,
Black Dog wishes it was "Oh Well."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I actually love Led Zeppelin. I love Black
I do
Dog.
too,
But to
but
me, it's two different things.
"Oh Well" is it's in its own universe.
It's all thing.
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Rattlesnake's Shake? And you can tell even by the vocal, like, I know God. Like, you can tell they're just having the best freaking time. And Mick they're playing. You can understand why his mind always goes back to this album, because you can hear how special it was. All right.
Have you guys seen that black and white version on YouTube?
Yes.
Anywhere? It's like from Finland or Sweden or something
I
like
think
that.
it's Finland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's great. I wish they'd film more of.
okay, yeah, I've already seen that one.
The playing than like all the psychedelic stuff that
Right.
they would do back then. But yeah, that's great.
Alicia, did Rattlesnake Shake make any kind of impression?
Not what you guys have been talking about, no. But I was just more unwinding from a long day at the office, so it was good, upbeat with a
Right.
break. So I wasn't thinking that deep.
And it really can go over your head if you don't like listen closely to the lyrics. You know what I mean? Jim.
Yes, I think it was slated for a U.S. single release.
Yeah, that was mentioned in NME. Yep.
And because rattlesnake is a familiar American term, because you kind of look out for rattle. I killed a rattlesnake in my day, so it's kind of it's kind of a part of the lexicon. But the subject matter, I think the radio guys, the producers, or whoever's in charge say, we're not doing this on my station. But it would have been a hit. Words were different, but the Stones and the Doors got away with certain lyrics, and this one's a little bit too far into the dangerous area. So it just didn't. I think it would have played on the radio in a different what do you call it, simulation, but it did not.
All right.
Well, the Mac singles generally tended to struggle in America. That was really the one country where they weren't really able to break through as much, other than "Oh Well." That received, I think, some minor chart success here and there. Although I think it did hit 42 on one of the Dutch charts, actually. So that was one of the few regions, I think the only region actually, where the song performed well at all.
The Dutch get it.
They do, yes.
All right, so next is Without You. What do you guys think of this one? Who wants to start this one off?
I love
Tony.
it. I love it. It's Oh Daddy years before Oh Daddy. It's like it's a minor key. It's very spacious.
Yeah.
You feel like it's a very private, almost personal moment on the record.
Right.
And I really wish that they had put this on Then Play On, the American version.
Yeah.
Because it was really it's a beautiful piece, I think.
All right. Anybody else? I agree with everything there. I don't have much to add.
Yeah, I was
It
just
pro-
gonna say in this little article I have, I think they misprinted it. It said Peter in his doomy blues vein, but it's obviously Danny Kerwin.
Right.
But I feel like it sounds like Danny Kerwin doing Peter Green doing BB King. And it's awesome. I mean, like Danny Kerwin's vocal is, very English and authentic to who he is, and I've always liked that, and I think he does a great job all across the board, and it's got that sort of spooky moodiness to it,
Right.
that everybody in the band could tap into. So I was really pleased when I heard it the first time.
Jim, what are your notes on this one?
Yes, a very haunting blues number by Danny. Danny was excellent in so many styles of music, both as a vocalist and a guitarist. It's a it's very nice, listenable piece. It's like I say, it's a haunting blues number.
It's interesting, like I said this earlier, how there's a certain thread that goes through Fleetwood Mac, and I feel like this song, you know, kind of
Right.
foreshadowed what we get later on in some ways with the hauntingness of it. I don't even know if that's a damn word. I'm getting tired. Any other thoughts on this one, Nick?
yeah, so Fleetwood Mac fans will know that there's another song with the exact title,
Right,
Without
yeah,
You, on
from
the
the extended play.
right? Personally, I
Yeah.
probably enjoy this one more. I also wish that was included on all editions. I think that they did slightly refresh the recording, probably redid it entirely. Kerwin sounds a little bit more confident on the then play on version in comparison to what we found on the English Rose version. But I think it's a good recording. I know that there were quite a few reviews that misattributed different musicians to songs. I think there was maybe one Melody Maker review that said that Jeremy Spencer did amazing slide guitar work on Showbiz Blues and a few other songs. And I think one of them even called them Fleetwood Rain, which I find amusing.
Jeez. Sam, do you have any thoughts on this one? Nope. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, next is Searching for Madge, which we already talked about. So then we have My Dream. This one's an instrumental, correct?
Yes.
All right. Who wants to start this one off?
I'll start.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
Yes, Danny sure had his own beautiful style. Once again, a very nice, relaxing instrumental. Um, I mean, Fleetwood Mac has a great group of instrumentals, and I like I like them all. They're just great little pieces of music.
It's interesting on the U.S. version of the album that we were used to. They did Showbiz Blues as track 3, then My Dream was track 4, right into Underway, so 2 instrumentals in a row, which I thought was interesting, but I loved it at the time. I always loved the Danny Kerwin instrumentals. I mean, he has some coming up on future albums that I really, really love. And this does have all the things I love about a Danny instrumental. All right, Sam.
Yeah, there's a funny comment in here. It's quote, "My dad's favorite," announced Peter as he chewed his lettuce.
Oh.
So it's kind of funny because my dad has told me, he was like, "I love that song, My Dream. That's my favorite song on Then Play On." And I think it's just another great example of Danny Kerwin's composing abilities and the way that he will layer his guitars. I don't think Peter Green's on this. If I had to guess, it sounds like all Danny Kerwin's guitar work.
Right.
Yeah,
All right.
Kerwin definitely had probably the widest palette of music interests. I think he was interviewed by one publication. The name's blanking, or I'm blanking on the name, I should say. And he was saying that I enjoy all sorts of music, any sort of good music, and that's certainly apparent on this. It's pretty reminiscent of the Shadows, in my opinion. And I think he has cited that band as one of his many influences, along with Django Reinhardt, who was probably his biggest at the time.
Right. Yep.
I like
Alright.
it. It's a good song. I think it's a beautiful instrumental. It's not, to me, it's nowhere near the ones he's gonna write, or the
Right.
ones, but it's still really good.
Yeah, I mean, he has some coming up that are amongst my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs. So,
And it seems to be that bridge between the kind of thick Django-like guitar work on Showbiz or on Jigsaw Puzzle Blues
mhm.
that you hear there. It's kind of that thick sound there, and you still get some of that here, but it's not as pastiche as it is later on, as it was for Jigsaw Puzzle Blues. So I
Right.
think we see him developing his own.
And I'm glad for all these instrumentals that they didn't feel like they had to write lyrics to them, because they definitely exist in the perfect time and space. I feel like the perfect time space, as Stevie Nicks would say.
Yes.
All right, all right.
Your book of miracles.
In her book of walking down the hall that was like cotton candy. All right. What was that in that song from Behind the Mask where she's talking about walking down the hall? Oh, it's the color of honey. It's the color of honey. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Is that
What's-
Freedom or something?
Affairs of the Heart.
Affairs of the Heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys. Back to then plan. Okay. Like Crying. All right. This one, I feel like Danny holds his own on this one. We have Danny on the acoustic guitar, right? And is Peter singing with them, or is that all Danny on the harmonies? They're singing together, right?
Duet.
I love their harmonies together. They sound great singing together. To me, this is a really strong collaboration. What do you guys think of this one?
Love it. I think it's great. I was reading somewhere, it might have been the Vaudeville years, it might have been elsewhere, that The Woman's Got the Blues was something that Peter was playing around with, and then Danny took it and made the song.
Okay. Jim, what are your notes on this one?
Yes, to me it sounds like that Danny and Peter harmonizing together, and I wrote at the end that I found like a live clip that they were singing together. So, and yes, the song's a bit sexist, but in general, it's the truth.
Oh God.
And
The
it's a
views of the panelists do not reflect those of the host.
it's a nice little. It's nice a nice little sing along type song, kind of like a bar in the bar. It's the last song of the night, before everybody leaves at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's a nice get together, sing along type thing.
And I like that they kept the recording a little loose and a little raw. Like they didn't overproduce it. It still has a lot of life in it. So I thought it was just perfect.
Yeah, it's just those two. It's
Yeah.
just those two and I think they're both playing electric guitars, but they're clean. They're not, cranked up. They're not blasting their orange amps or their Fenders or whatever they were using at the time. But that and the guitar interplay is great, the call and response, and it sounds like a polished version of those apartment recordings, which I think everybody should seek out, because I think that those are just such a cool little testament. There's been stuff written that, Peter Green and Danny Kerwin didn't get along and stuff, but they definitely did at one period. And this is a great example of that.
And musically they got along. I mean, when they were working, they were musically complementary.
Right.
Very much
So
so.
whether
yes.
their personalities didn't work, and which
Or if
I
it's-
think Danny's overstating that, to be honest with you. I think that Danny probably is probably attributing Peter leaving too much to his own behavior, but that's
And nothing to do with them, really, probably.
but I think that musically they just really were very good. They were like a musical partners. I love that.
It seemed like Danny didn't get along with anybody, but I feel like he also collaborated well with everybody. Like, I feel like the next album, then the two albums. What's that?
You mean like Lindsay?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I thought that Danny Kerwin and Bob Welch complimented each other.
Oh, really well.
Yeah, I mean,
And those are some of my favorite albums of all time. Not just by Fleetwood Mac, but of all time. So, Alicia, I'm glad you're hanging in there because I think there's some albums coming up that you're just gonna fall in love with. I really believe that, knowing your taste in things. I could be wrong. All right.
If not, we'll bully you into loving
Yeah,
it.
we'll bully you. Now, interestingly enough, both versions of the album, I feel like all versions of the album do have "Like Crying" as the second to last track, and then they all end with "Before the Beginning." Am I correct in saying that?
I, I think there's one version where there's a giggle preceding the track. Is that the version that you listened to?
I don't. You know what? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think that they moved the giggle around depending on the version, but
Okay.
Oh,
I think
there's a
most
giggle. Yeah, there's a giggle at the end of Like Crying, and yeah.
Yes. Yep. I remember it now. Yep. All right. So the end of the proper album. Before we go into the singles, we actually made it through this one. Are you proud of us, you guys? Before the Beginning is talk about brooding Peter Green track with Mick on the toms. Some wild crescendos, Peter sounding tortured. Yep, it checks all the boxes. Amazing song though. And Sam, I know you're the big green head here, so what did you think of this one?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I think it's got a really cool slapback vocal effect, which sounds very 70s, which late 60s, early 70s, but and then the 6-string bass plays off of the lead guitar. He's got this lead guitar tone it doesn't sound huge, but it's absolutely sizzles. And I've always been interested in how he got that because I heard it throughout this album, this time period on this record that you can hear it a little bit on Rattlesnake Shake kind of buried down in there. And I think even one of the background guitars in Oh Well, you can hear it too. But that's, I've listened to this stuff so many times that's what I'm listening to. This last run through is like, wow, that's a little minute guitar tone nobody else is even going to pick up on. But I love it. I just think it's a cool song. It's kind of got a Otis Rush minor blues vibe. And this was another one that was on as an outtake, blues in B flat minor on one of those vaudeville years or something like that, where you can hear him getting kind of ticked off and telling everybody like, get it together, like, come on. But it's another one of those that was, tracked with the band. So it's got that feel to it. And I like it. And last thing I'll say about the album proper, I recall listening to this album when I first got the British version, and I went to my grandpa's house and my grandpa and grandma's house, and I played it for my grandpa because I was like, I wonder what he would think about this. And some of the songs was kind of like, but
Right.
then the more aggressive stuff, but then like this song and Underway, I remember being there with him, and he just soaked it all in. And I mean, he was probably 92, 91 at the time, and it's a great experience for me, and I'm glad that I was able to do that. So that wrapping it all up, that British version, that's kind of takes me back to that time period. So I'm really glad to talk about it. I'm glad you guys invited me.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're here. I love how the song fades. It just kind of trickles off into the wilderness, just like they're walking away. That's interesting because I always think of a band's discography as, and their entire body of work from the first song on the first album to the last song. It's interesting that if you listen to the Fleetwood Mac albums, you go from Before the Beginning into This Is the Rock. I know was there any other the original Fleetwood Mac? Were there any other auxiliary releases between?
They had Blues Jam. So the release for this was
Blues
unusual
Jam,
because
yes.
they released this album in the UK in September, but I don't think America saw the release of it until November or even December, actually.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a gap. And then Blues Jam, even though it was recorded mostly before then Play On, it didn't see a release until December, I think, by Blue Horizon. And that was a bit of a controversy because they had two albums competing alongside each other, more or less, kind of cutting into their sales.
Sounds like what happened when Donna Summer released she works hard for the money on Mercury. But anyway, that's another podcast.
It's just like Donna Summer.
Just like Donna Summer.
Donna Summer.
Do you guys?
There's one more detail on this song too. So their manager Clifford Davis, he actually released a cover of this song with some members of Fleetwood Mac, and I decided to give it a listen. It has orchestral backing, and he's certainly a competent enough vocalist. It doesn't really compare to the original, but I mean, it's fine enough, I suppose. But it's just an unusual addendum or another chapter to this album's history.
This wild story. Do you guys consider Blues Jam as one of their proper releases or a side project? Because I never considered it one of the proper studio albums.
I love it. It's one of the best albums. So even if it's chronologically out of place, I'm so glad to have it, and I rate it very highly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it was intended to be a released album when they recorded it, and then they broke from the record label and kind of left it. So I mean, and rightfully so. I think Blue Horizon released it because that was the original intent.
Oh, and thank God they did. Some of the stuff that they cut on there is the best. I mean, it's. But
Sugar Mama, that's.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean,
See, the only song I ever got into was Homework.
Oh, Homework's awesome.
you don't like the Danny songs on there?
No.
Like It This Way?
Nope.
Like It This Way is
I
amazing.
don't like this way.
Just never got into it. But you know what? I haven't listened to it since like 1992. So maybe I could give it another chance.
Well,
Not this season, gentlemen. I'm sorry.
Back to Before the Beginning, though, I got to say that this is every time, once in a while on The Ledge, for example, they'll have like rankings, what you think is your favorite song from each album.
Sure.
This is always my favorite song from Then Play On.
It's not When You Say?
It's by far, Before the Beginning, it's by far and away the best song, I think.
We'll do Blues Jam and Chess the same season that we do The Visitor.
Okay.
But
Right.
just a question.
Alicia's gonna block me on Facebook, roping me into these.
Just a question about blues about Before the Beginning. Isn't that a modulation at the end? If I'm remembering that rightly, don't like it modulates at the end.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would have to listen to it again, but I think that there is like something that happens.
But they pull it off so well too. It's because it is this pentatonic, key, and then all of a sudden it just moves into a higher key at the end, in a really interesting way.
Well, go ahead, Jim.
Yes, I've got some notes on this. A great ending to the original vinyl album. Great lyrics surrounded with a great musical composition. It has some similarities to The Chain, which was released 7 years later.
Now, isn't it crazy that it was just 7 years between this album and Rumors? Because 7 years ago was 2018, and that feels like yesterday. But I feel like historically, that feels like 30 years apart. Shit. Well, all right, let's go out of order here. Because Man of the World, we have a few singles we have to talk about because we're starting off the next podcast fresh with Peter Green out of the band. So, Man of the World was the first of these singles, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was on a different record label. They only did one single on the label.
Immediate, I think it was.
It was Immediate Records, yes.
With the B-side, Your Head's Gonna Get Kicked In Tonight, or whatever.
Someone's gonna get their head kicked in tonight, yes.
So Man of the World was a mid-tempo where Peter Green really started digging in lyrically to his struggle with fame. And, it was a hit single in the UK. There's some crescendos. Sam, let's have you start on this one since you're a Green fan.
Yeah, I'm going totally from memory on this one because I didn't listen to it today. This is what I recall, an extension of Albatross where you've got the two different guitar players bringing their style into it. And I think, in a way, it kind of like is very similar to... is very similar to the B-side of Green Manalishi, World in Harmony, because Danny takes a pretty aggressive tone, more so than Peter Green, which I think Danny Kerwin maybe sometimes is, labeled as, the choir boy with the pretty melodies and harmonies and stuff like that. But he really would play some heavy stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like, like we talked about the end of Coming Your Way, but on this song, I think it's like the middle 8 or something. There's that heavier lead guitar, and that's Danny Kerwin. The vibrato is a giveaway, but not something that maybe most people would expect from him. And then, of course, like going down into the lyrical realm of what Peter was kind of going through. It's interesting because I always assumed that this would have been the time where they were like, I guess the rest of the band might have been on a high, but he was obviously going through some deeper emotions, and it comes out. I mean, the part where he says that he, you know, I mean, does he mention not? Yeah, he does mentions not being born, and then in the second song on "Then Play On," he mentions something very similar to that, and it's sad. So sometimes I kind of just listen to the music and try not to think too deeply about it.
Yeah, it's a really sad song. Jim, did you do any notes on this one?
Yes, it's a beautiful, reflective, sad lyrics. It reads like a newspaper editorial, like letter to the editor. You have something to say, that sort of thing. Green trying to get his message out, and he did. Along with the lyrics, the music is top notch.
Yeah.
Was this about the last thing that they released, our last single?
No, that was Green Man Alicia.
Was this second to the last, or down that?
It was before Then Play On.
Yeah, this was before Then Play On.
Oh, this was out. Oh, okay. This was before the album. Okay.
Yeah.
In between the others, it seems like the mood is kind of like towards the tail end of his career with the band. Very, I mean, like it's like he's kind of given up on some things.
So
almost suicidal.
Yeah.
Glad he didn't do. I mean, you know, he could have been hyperbole, but if you write something, you put that into words. That's kind of scary.
No, I apologize for not having researched this, but in the timeline of things, would this have come after Pious Bird of Good Omen as a standalone single? So this is kind of the bridge between Pious and then Play On a little bit, right?
It would have come after. It would have come after English Rose.
Okay.
There's a video. There's a video where he's like lip syncing to this. That's quite compelling.
It's hard to imagine Peter Green lip syncing.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
I know they had to.
Take. It could be a live take. It sounds like the original track where he's, or could be singing to it. But I never watched it for years. But I just remember that there's this Man of the World video with I think it might be just. I don't know. Does Mick even play on this with band members?
I know. I think you're right. They would do that a lot, where they would.
Albatross is an example where they're just kind of playing to it,
right?
And Man of the World is similar to that, but just seeing that clip from when it was put out that's quite compelling. So I mean, that's just something to look at, is to watch that. Try to look up Man of the World video or something and look at that again.
I think Clifford Davis did a version of this one too, where he just sang over the backing track. I actually posted years ago on YouTube the 4 Clifford Davis songs. 2 of them were to the backing tracks of, I believe, Man of the World and Before the Beginning. And then the other 2 where Peter Green played all the instruments. One was Homework, and the other was a different song, Come Down to the Water or something like that. But anyway, that's like the only thing I've ever posted on YouTube under my name is that those Clifford Davis.
That's awesome.
At least one of those Clifford Davis singles is up there. But anyway.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on Man of the World?
Yeah, I have a couple. So apparently the original demo, this is from the vaudeville years, I'm heavily relying on this. The original recording had quite a few clicks, so the engineer, Martin Birch, went through a lot of great lengths to remove all of them. And
Okay.
upon Green's return to the studio, he was surprised that he was able to clean up the recording quite a bit. And also on the chart success of this song, it was more or less a byproduct of payola. So I'm pretty sure Davis paid a bunch of record companies a decent sum of money to ensure that it got successful. And he was incredibly defensive about it when asked. He said, yeah, I gave people money to ensure that it got to the right people, and you can read into that however you like. So,
well, I guess the funds ran dry before they had to do Rattlesnake Shake to the U.S. radio.
Right. They didn't put in the legwork for that one.
Yeah, and he put in all that money. He said, "You better lip sync that on TV, Peter Green." All right. Well, we're about to get into a big song here. This is an important one. Oh well, part 1 and 2. This is the song in the later years that Bob Welch sang it, Lindsey Buckingham sang it. Didn't Rick Vito sing it, or Billy? One of those dudes sing it. I think.
Did, yes.
Yeah. You know what? I like the Peter Green version. I think everyone else gave it a try. Peter Green, though, just like, what was the other song that someone was talking about?
In terms of being covered?
Yeah.
Rattlesnake
Shake. Yeah, I feel the same about Oh Well. Because I feel like everyone else is singing the words, but Peter Green was living the words. Like, you could tell that, he just embodied this manic, tortured, and then to go into the part 2 of the song, which was orchestral. Now, Alicia, I know you know Oh Well, so what did you think of this song, going back and hearing the original version with Peter Green? I caught you right when you ate something. I apologize.
Shoot, there went the chocolate chip. Sorry. This is going longer than I thought. This one had, well, I'm thinking between the two. It has a great groove, so no matter what. I can see why this was a big hit. I find it interesting that this is the one song that seemed to last. What I mean is, Oh Well seemed to have been done with every tour.
Right. I mean,
So-
it was on the 1980 live album, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Yes.
God, there's nothing more annoying than Lindsey Buckingham going, "Oh well, oh well, oh well, oh well." It's like, shut the fuck up, Lindsey Buckingham.
They did it with Dave Mason. They did it again with
Well, I think Becca
saw them
sang
in
it.
2000 and I think it was 2009.
Listen,
Yeah.
unless they did,
Them too.
I'm not taking any of this seriously unless they did it with Dave Walker.
Oh,
I think he did do it, yeah.
They certainly did it with Dave Walker.
Walker confirmed that he did sing it.
Oh well.
I love the then play or this version of it because I love the way the acoustic and the electric guitars interact. But I've got to say that in terms of instrumentation, hearing some of the Bare Trees live concerts where they were doing this, the band is cooking, especially with the organ on it.
Okay. Yeah.
It is just unbelievable. That doesn't, and Bob Welch, I'm not crazy about his voice, but he does serve this song pretty well when he sings it.
Yeah, he's got that swagger.
Yeah, and he's got the right pitch and everything. It's like a talk sing, and it works for this song.
It's like real authentic swagger. Peter Green had it. I think Bob Welch had it. And I mean, the lyrics to this are rapped. Like, that's straight up hip hop. Years before hip hop was hip hop. But I mean, everything about it is just, I love it. I played it when I was in college. I played it for an ensemble. I did a big project on it where I deconstructed the entire orchestral part. And if you're familiar with MIDI, which is essentially like digital notation in a way, I made a MIDI version of the entire part with,
Wow.
with the guitars, the Spanish guitar, the organ, or not the organ, the cello, which is very droning. You can hear in the background at some parts of. Am I skipping ahead? Are we only doing the front?
No,
piece,
we can
or
talk.
doing everything?
We can talk about it as an entire composition.
Because the beginning part one is so dense and layered, and it's actually in mono. No stereo version of the studio single exists, and actually when you put it into like a software, it will come up as stereo. And my conclusion is that what they did was they took the mono version and then they ran it through with some slight stereo reverb on the entire track to give it a little bit of atmosphere. But in existence, the only version is that mono single version, and it's very dense, very layered. You can hear all these little guitars going in and out. It's a lot less clean, of course, than the live versions, which you've just got two electric guitars playing with the rest of the band. So there's a lot you can really listen to. There's I think he's playing his resonator guitar on there. There's some, the 6-string bass. There's electric guitars layered in, of course, John McVie on bass and Mick on drums. But then you get into the orchestral part too, and you've got electric guitar, you've got Spanish guitar, you've got flute, you've got cello, you've got piano. When that piano part comes on, that's my absolute favorite part.
That part.
And is that Jeremy Spencer? I read somewhere
that's his only contribution. Yeah.
Yep. But what a contribution! I mean, that's if you're gonna make a contribution and that's it. Holy crap!
Well, I almost wonder if that was tied to, there was an interview where it was like Jeremy and Peter were going to write this spiritual, expose. And I wonder if that was maybe one of the things that they had been working on with that in mind or something. I don't know, but it's very medieval sounding as well.
Judas Priest.
Yeah. But anyway, I think it's incredible. And, yeah, there's not much more else I don't think I can say about it. I love it.
I mean, and then, even mix off-center cowbell hits. I mean, it's just a very eccentric piece of music that makes no sense, but makes a lot of sense. And it's a wild ride. Jim, why don't you give us your notes?
Yes, on part one, the often live covered beast of a song. This is such a beast, and a lot of bands try it as a challenge.
They try.
Yeah, they try. A lot of attitude and defiance packed in 2 minutes. Like the original, it's just a little over 2 minutes. Yeah. And a lot packed in there. The Mick Fleetwood percussion breaks make me laugh every time. It's just kind of humor. It's just funny. A lot of primal rhythm to this. On part two, I have vision of Clint Eastwood riding through a Spanish desert listening to this. It's very spaghetti western-y type music. The piano part in the middle was played by Jeremy. I forgot there was some rather muscular parts towards the end of this instrumental. Oh well, and 1 and 2 together are one of the biggest masterpieces in music history. It's both together. That's, you throw anything like the Beach Boys or Zeppelin or the Beatles, and they've done great work, and this is up there with that.
Now, didn't Peter play the timpani?
I think he did, yes.
Yep.
Pretty sure he did all instruments with the exception of the recorder, which was played by his girlfriend, and then the piano, which was from Jeremy on part two. And part two is actually written first, if I'm not mistaken, and Green held that in much higher regard than the first part. I think initially he wanted part two to be the single, and then once it became apparent that part one had commercial viability, he was keeping his fingers crossed that radio programmers would play both parts in tandem, one after the other.
Nope.
But that's not what happened whatsoever.
He bet Mick Fleetwood and John McVie £10 that it wouldn't chart.
No, I think it was the reverse. I think Mick and John thought that the song wouldn't chart.
Oh, no, I thought it was the opposite. I thought, interesting, okay.
So in Fleetwood's memoir, both of them actually, he said that he thought that the song was too sad and was unlikely to chart, but it ended up being the band's only Hot 100 entry. Green had admitted his position later on, but I think in an interview, it could have been with Melody Maker, he said that he wouldn't be surprised if the song didn't catch on, but he was a little bit more positive by the time he had released it.
You are right. No, now I remember this. That one of the things I heard from when I was reading, it was an older book saying that his musical instincts got the better of him, and he insisted that it was a single.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, look at how self-depreciating the lyrics are. My legs are skinny. What does he say? His
Legs
he's
are
thin. Yeah. Was it only a part 1 and part 2 because it was initially released as a single? If it had just been an album cut, would it have just been one song?
I think he viewed the two as
Two movements.
two movements almost. Yes. He wanted the part 2 to be part 1 though. I think that was part of it. And there's an interesting video, and still might be online, but they actually mimed part 2, and there's a portion of that where Green is also miming the recorder part, even though he didn't play that for the live performance. He just puts his guitar down.
Is that when he was wearing the robe? He's wearing that big robe.
I think he is, yeah. I think Danny's doing Peter's guitar part. Jeremy, even though he didn't play on it, he's playing guitar for the miming. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I thought you were talking about mimes, like actual mimes.
Oh,
what the hell is going on here?
No, they are not mime.
Okay, that would have been great if there was like a mime video of mimes. Like
that would be quite peculiar. But no, they're just. You can't really say they're lip syncing it because it's an instrumental composition, but that's the only footage that I'm aware of where they actually did any sort of performance of part 2.
It's performance art. Jim, did you have something?
Yes. Rock radio would play, oh, well, I don't know, back in the 80s and 90s, they would play that first part and they would play like a minute or minute and a half of the second part 2. I think that's on the...
Well, there's a little bit of part 2 and part 1.
On the chain box set, does that how it runs? Does it run with the first part and then part of the second?
Yes.
Okay, that's
they always include about 1 or 2 minutes of part 2.
Yeah.
Part 1.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, at least the public got
issue.
The public did get a taste of what they were. I consider these two together like Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Pretty epic altogether.
All right. Well, we have 2 songs left. We're making it there. And as a little side note, speaking of Bob Welch's swagger, like, he goes into Fleetwood Mac. In his Fleetwood Mac albums, he's this mystical. Then he loses more hair, buys a cigar, and then gets more swagger on his solo albums. Like, how does that happen?
And a wig.
All right.
He covered this song later, I think, on his Fleetwood Mac Years and Beyond.
Oh,
he did a lot of the instrumentation with MIDI, if I'm not mistaken.
He did Rhiannon too, so there you go.
Yeah, that's right up there with Bob Welch looks at Bob.
I love it when he's got those big glasses that are down at the end of his nose and they're all fogging up, and he's just
it's like the Jerk. The Jerk from that movie, The Jerk.
I like that album, French Kiss. That's a good album.
Oh yeah,
his first 2 are fine.
Yeah, I have them all. Would anyone participate in a Bob Welch looks at Bob podcast?
Why not? Sure.
Don't do it.
He does Moody's Mood for Love on it, so why not?
I don't even think I've heard that.
Oh, don't do it. And you know what took me a long time to find was the Fleetwood Mac Years and Beyond Volume 2. Because there was a second volume, but I finally found it. All right.
That's the one with Rhiannon.
Yep. Oh, do we lose Tony? He'll come back, hopefully. All right, we have 2 songs left. Are you guys hanging in there? I feel ragged like Peter Green when he recorded the next song, The Green Manalishi.
Oh, yes.
Now, Alicia, you did know this song. Did you watch Stevie and Lindsay's version or ever listen to it?
Yes. Yes, I did. And I really liked how Stevie she was like moving her voice in and out to add mysticism for the song.
I feel like with this song, like, if you think Stevie Nicks is enchanting, listen to Peter Green's original version. I mean, he's going into falsetto. This is a wild ride. What was your thoughts when you heard this original version? Oh, you didn't make it this far, did you?
I haven't made it this.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot. Tony, welcome back. Tony, welcome back. We're talking about the Green Manalishi. Since
Yeah, I
you're
know,
back,
my computer cut out. Sorry.
it was the ghost of Peter Green. He kicked you off the podcast. It was
He
the
didn't
ghost
want
of
me here anymore.
it was the ghost of Bob Welch for talking bad about his Bop album. Aw.
I liked his Bop album.
I love Bob Welch. You're about to hear my love of Bob Welch over the next, well, not next month, but after that. That might be my favorite era of Fleetwood. I'm getting tired, so I'm rambling, but I love that era. Sam, what do you think of Green Manalishi?
I mean, I think what's interesting, I noticed today listening it in sequence after OL Part 2 is it's maintains that medieval flavor, but it's a lot heavier, obviously, and there's a lot of intricate things happening in the background. Like in the outro, of course, you've got the wailing vocal, which is also sounds like he's using that slapback echo on the voice again.
Yep.
Very similar to Before the Beginning, but there's like some really cool guitar lines that he's playing back there, and yeah, this is one that I remember reading where John McVie got a little ticked off because Peter Green was telling him what to play.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it's very, you get the parts are very regimented in this song. It was very, well put together. And I think Peter Green was disappointed it didn't chart higher, but people were probably like, what are we doing with? Yeah, this is like heavy metal before, it's like Black Sabbath territory.
I mean, this is kind of a terrifying song. This is obviously someone at the brink of having a breakdown. It's very real. It's very raw. It's very, when someone really writes in their own blood and puts a song down that's completely transparent about how they feel. In this modern age of streaming, though, I don't love these songs as bonus tracks on Then Play On. Like, I don't like listening to, Before the Beginning into Oh Well, into Green Manalishi. Like, I'm such an album guy where I like Before the Beginning to end and then hear silence. But I know in the age of streaming, things have to go somewhere. But do you guys have any thoughts about this, like, as being one large piece of work?
Well, I just wanted to talk about the Green Manalishi for a minute before we get in, if that's
right.
Okay. Just because I think that it's a, it's a beautiful piece and it's been done by so many other people.
Right.
And I can see why because of all the riffs and so forth in it. But it's a strange piece, and I think that it really also gives you a sense of where Fleetwood Mac was going to go if he
right.
Yeah.
Because there's that piece, that song Sandy Mary, and which is really quite heavy, and you get a sense that they would have gotten much more into kind of a crunching, heavier guitar kind of thing with the intricacies still there, and this is kind of an interesting place to part, and I just think it's hilarious that with at the end where he's wailing at the end, and that's the part that Stevie Nicks does in concert,
right?
Which I thought was just hilarious. Anyway, so that's it.
And that's why I brought up the album thing, because I feel like this song especially suffers from being bundled in to this album. I feel like as a standalone single in its place in history, how this is the last thing he recorded, wasn't it? Or one of the last things released with Peter Green.
It was recorded after he announced he was leaving the band, if I'm not mistaken.
Jim, what are your notes on this one?
Yes, very dark lyrics. Green said Green represented money as in the devil. He had a dream. He wrote the song after a dream. There was this green dog barking at him, and Green was like, he said he was dead, and the dog was barking him from the real world to the post-life world, and he woke up and he started writing this song. The last song Green recorded with Fleetwood Mac, if this is not heavy metal, I don't know what is. All the band members made great contributions here. Judas Priest covers this, and many people prefer their version. I listened to the this afternoon, and I still prefer the Fleetwood Mac version, but Judas does a pretty good job on it. Because I mean that's what they are. They're metal.
Right. I like the effects that Peter puts on some of his, some of the lines. He puts even more effect on his voice to add to the creep factor, and it's just. I didn't hear the song until many years later, maybe even in the 2000s, because it wasn't on any of the albums I had or CDs, and until the internet came along, I never knew about this song. And the first time I heard it, it's a terrifying piece of music. Like, move over, Sisters of the Moon.
Yeah.
How about this one? I know it's apples and oranges, but what a dark piece of work. Any other thoughts on this one?
I'll give a few more thoughts or
Yeah.
just some additional comments on the process of recording it. So I'm going back to the Lavaliers liner notes because they have so much information on this era. So for some of the reverb effects, they actually went down to an underground car park, kind of a car garage. And I think they placed their amps in there and they got the natural reverb there and recorded it.
Wow.
And there's some 6-string bass work as well that's more present close to the end of the song. I think John McVie may have gotten a little bit jealous that Peter was taking some of his bass parts. And of course, that would happen again with Lindsay.
With Lindsay?
Yeah, exactly. Even on rumors like Secondhand News, for example.
Poor John. Poor John.
And John is almost always right. I mean, I still think the bass part in Secondhand News that John did was better than the one that.
Right, you can hear it on the deluxe edition of what John originally intended. But yeah, the wailing that Green does on this song, I mean, Nyx would later emulate that to a certain extent at the end of Gold Dust Woman. So you have a lot of parallels from song to song. And you were talking about how Green was disappointed it didn't chart higher. It was still a top 10 hit in the UK. It's still very successful, and they wouldn't really hit the top 10 again for another 9 years in the UK with the title track. Because if you look at their chart history, even though the songs from Rumors did very well in the United States, I don't think it went any higher than maybe 24 being Dreams. All their others were kind of around 32, 38, 45. So it took them a very long time to attain the same level of success in the United States. Probably until really Tango the Night. That's when they finally started matching the success, because Mirage, they only had Oh Diane.
Right.
Okay, you're talking about in the UK.
Yeah, their UK chart success. In the US, of course, they had a lot of hits.
Yes. What is it? Tango. Yeah, Tango did better in the UK than in the United States, because Christine had great songs on Tango.
She brought her A game for that one.
Everywhere, Little Lies, lots of good songs.
They use that stuff in commercials.
That's one of the reasons why Everywhere recharted. I think it was in this one television advert, if I'm not mistaken, and it hit the top 20 again.
And let's revisit the moment from the Tango live video where Stevie added a background part to Everywhere. One of the worst moments.
Oh, that is a terrible addition. Although her additions to Isn't It Midnight are great.
Someone on the ledge is like, Stevie should have just gone out in the middle of the chorus of Everywhere and just hit mixed gong. All right, we have one song left. I'm going to mix this down tonight and get 2 hours of sleep. All right.
World in Harmony.
Now, after the A side of Green Manalishi with a 2-pronged crown, you flip the record over, and there's a song called World in Harmony, an instrumental. Was this a Kerwin composition?
It's
both. I think it's co-written.
Co-written. It is a nice instrumental.
It's very
Green helped with
like the A section is written by Kerwin and the middle section's by Green.
Okay. What do you guys think of this one?
I think
one
it's
of my
great.
favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, that intro part when it first comes on is almost cinematic, I think. And maybe I just haven't listened to this in a while, but this was always the most elusive recording, as the last one to appear on any type of CD. Of all the other ones, there was maybe an outtake or something that came out, but this actual B-side version, that and like Purple Dancer, they were much later than anything else making an appearance on a CD. So to hear it in the digital remaster, and I think it's it's remarkable. I maybe it was just because I haven't heard it in a while or something like that. But when I pulled into my garage and I was like, all right, let me listen to this last song, and I just kind of let it play. And of course, turn the engine off, and I can hear everything a lot better too. But when the bass comes in, and it's a really cool song. And I think maybe I kind of underappreciated it just because it was kind of hard to get to over the years. And I know the live version very well, and the same with Green Manalishi. I almost wonder if those were played live before they recorded them in the studio, because they were on Boston. And
Boston, they were recorded before the Boston.
Oh, they were? Okay.
Yeah.
And listen to these songs, like what could they have done had they stayed together? You always wonder that, because they were on a hot streak. Like they took
Mary is, I think, a really good example. I'm sorry, Jeremy.
No, I was just gonna say, like, they took what they did and then Play On, and obviously the creativity was still flowing with this single here.
Yeah, each one of their singles was incredibly unique from the other. You had obviously Black Magic Woman, and then you had the introduction of Strings with Need Your Love So Bad, Albatross, Man of the World. Oh Well was radically different from Man of the World, and then Green Man Alicia was radically different from Oh Well. So you have this wonderful progression of their songs, and we have somewhat of an idea of what they were doing. I think they had another recording session in October of 1969, maybe one or two others in early 1970, in addition to these two compositions, Green Man Alicia and World in Harmony. And one little one bit of information about World in Harmony, those sessions, apparently they were anything but harmonious. There were a lot of arguments. I think some of them were actually captured on tape for the vaudeville years, like arguments between John McVie and Peter Green in particular, but they were able to get on tape. I think Green and Kerwin had at one point planned an instrumental duet album together, but that fell through. Green ended up doing End of the Game instead, a few other singles on top of that, including a Heavy Heart, which is actually one of my favorites. Super out there, far different from anything he's done in the past, or since then even.
Well, Green really wanted to do a lot more improv.
Yes, that was one of the reasons why he did leave. Some of the reasons for his exit have been heavily distorted, sensationalized. A lot of it's thrown on the fact that he had the German jet set, the Munich incident, and that's part of the acid. Situation. Right, and he had done acid before that too. I think on maybe the first or second American tour. I think Fleetwood was saying that Green was never the same again, and I can't really speak for him, but Green also said that he found the session to be very enjoyable and that he didn't see it as problematic whatsoever. He did it on his own volition. So a lot of the reasons for his departure, from what I could gather, had to do more so with creative differences, believing that the band couldn't provide him with a vehicle that he wanted to move further in terms of his musical progression. Obviously, a lot of variables at play. That's just one of the reasons.
Well, there is no doubt that Green was irreparably damaged by LSD. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt about that. Sure,
but you're right. I think that the musical differences, the Mac's decision, the backing band they were really part players. They were not really heavy improv players. And when Green came back to help them out when Jeremy left, they really hated that tour, even though the audience loved it.
Right.
Because they didn't know what they were playing. They would just go in there and then Green would start jamming.
For hours.
Yeah.
And then Green would go into the microphone and say, Yankee bastards.
Yankee bastards, yeah. which the Americans love. So I mean, it was, but they hated making that tour. They were part players. And so I remember there was an interview too, right around the time of, I believe it was right around the time of Bare Trees, maybe before Bare Trees, and or it could have been Future Games right around that time. But they were criticizing End of the Game.
Oh.
They were saying it was all wah wah, and it was they were all really denigrating the album. So
Yeah, Fleetwood initially, his comments were a little bit more ambivalent, and then I think Martin Selmans, he did some sort of blog pretty recently, probably 2 or 3 years ago, and he dug up this interview where he discussed this, and Fleetwood's views radically changed, where he was saying jamming, it's different. He didn't outright say it was bad, but then in his memoir, he completely reversed course and said that he was almost appalled that he would do such a thing. It's not verbatim what he said,
Right.
but he was just a little bit more negative in terms of how he was discussing the album in 2015 or 2014 in comparison to the early 1970s.
Fleetwood's always flip-flopping though. I mean, there was an interview with him around Bare Trees, where he was like, we tend to do a different show and we do it differently every night.
Yeah.
Because some bands, they play the same set list and they do the songs the same way every night. We're not like that. Well, look what they became.
Yeah.
More or less, yes.
Fast forward to 2023 through 2000 or 2003.
I mean, they actually did change the set on a few occasions for the Say You Will tour. That was probably one of the more eclectic sets that they've done in a
because they did
while,
this new songs.
Okay.
Well, any other thoughts on all these songs? It would be nice to go back. All right, briefly, Jim.
Yeah, World in Harmony, instrumental written by Green and Kerwin. It's the B-side of Green Manalishi single. Very pretty instrumental. I like the harsher bit of music towards the middle.
And that's what Green wrote, right? The middle part?
Yeah,
Okay.
a little more acidy and heavy. A very nice composed bit of music, which Fleetwood Mac excelled at many times. It's one of their more memorable instrumentals. Very pretty.
Cool. Well, I was a little worried about making it through this podcast because I'm a tired
A
bitch.
little more.
Oh
Yeah.
Tired, yeah.
I'm gonna say this is this ain't the conclusion of the Spencer Green era, but it would if they got along and they didn't do too much acid and they weren't crazy personalities. If they just kind of held together for about 3, 4, 5 more years,
yeah.
because they were headed to like the Zeppelin, Who type, creativity and except they were a big draw on both sides of the pond anyway through that period. But being like more in the public in the United States, like name recognition, they would have achieved that. It's too bad, but you can't change history. But
Yeah.
it would have been nice that they held, because especially the live stuff with Jeremy, with Danny, and with Peter on stage. That was a super group. That was a very great band. That just jumps out at you.
Yeah.
While these guys did exist and they did play live and they were just terrific.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's better that they kind of ended this lineup at their apex, their A game. They went out with such a wonderful album and they didn't have any diminishing returns because, I mean, the lineup really only existed for 34 months. Yet Green had such a big impact on the band within that short span of time.
I think Peter Green played everything that he wanted to play. I think he wrote the songs that he wanted to write. And he really, I mean, if you look at that period, he had a record deal to go in and record his own album. And apparently those first sessions he went in, he had a song like Sandy Mary, and I think Drifting was another song that was drifting and never got a proper release. But the way I look at it is he wrote everything that he had in him that he ever wanted to write.
Right.
And then the end of the game was like, okay, well, I owe them a record. Let me just go improv with my buddies, because apparently he had thrown out whatever he had worked on that was supposed to be the initial follow-up, which was supposed to have Sandy Mary as a single, which is one of my, if there's tapes out there that exist from that session, that's got to be my white whale, is to hear the album that he originally was going to record as his debut album, but pivoted to the experimental stuff. But I kind of look at it as like maybe he just did everything that he was supposed to do, and he knew when it was time to hang it up.
Yeah, he could have continued, but he would have been doing it for reasons that the band wanted, which was to make more money,
Right.
be more popular, and it was not what was fueling him.
And he had already, if you see, he had been kind of stepping out. I mean, even like letting Kerwin songs open up both sides of Then Play On.
That's on the, that's
He-
on Austin.
Yeah, I feel like he was, and he wanted Jeremy Spencer in the band because he didn't want to do the whole thing by himself. I don't think that he liked to be the very center of attention. I think he was still very good at it, but I don't think he necessarily liked it.
So, just a quick, we're just going to take a quick detour, and then we're going to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. I'm sorry I'm not calling on anybody else, you guys. We got to wrap this up. But we did a 3-hour podcast on Then Play On. I think we did it justice.
Yes.
But a little aside, just yes or no, do you guys feel like Led Zeppelin maintained quality through their entire discography? Or do you think it waned off towards the end?
It changes, but it changed, but it was still high quality.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, I mean, they're not one of my favorite bands, but I never felt that any one of their albums was really weak, really.
I like number 3 is my favorite album by them, and I never really got into them as much as I have other stuff of that era, like the Stones, but so I don't really know. I know some of didn't they have some 80s stuff that was a little
No, their last one was in 79.
79.
Yeah, they
Okay, so
disbanded.
it sounds
The Outdoor
80.
was the, yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm not a huge fan of that.
But the one thing he did there is he stopped singing in falsetto and started singing lower range, and it sounded better in that way.
I love Robert Plant's solo stuff from
I do
early
too.
2000s.
I'm in the mood. Oh, the
Big Log
Allison
is
Krauss.
beautiful. Big Log is beautiful, and
I love Big Log.
oh my
Dreamland. I love Dreamland. It's got this killer guitar player. I saw him at Bonnaroo. I worked at Bonnaroo in like 2015, and they played there. And he's got this guy that's from South Africa that plays guitar, Adams, Justin Adams, maybe. But anyway, he's got incredibly like unique rhythm, and he'll play different instruments and stuff on those records. Anyway, not to go too off topic, but I actually like that stuff more than the later Led Zeppelin stuff.
Why, Jeremy? Are you gearing toward another podcast group? Led Zeppelin, is that it?
I am a big Led Zeppelin fan. I do feel like their album Presence wasn't as good as some of the other ones, which was a little bit later one. But I do like In Through the Outdoor. Coda, of course, was just the outtakes. But Jim, I saw your hand was up, so let's finish off with whatever you had to say.
Well, we bringing up Led Zeppelin. The first 4 are just terrific. They start out basically a blues album,
right?
And then they got to like Led Zeppelin 4, which was like side 1 is a monster.
Yeah.
And then they started trailing off. I think they got a little too Robert Plant-y towards the end. I mean, I'm not knocking him. I think they brought a lot of synth and stuff in there. Not to knock it. It wasn't. It was just maybe some people like it, but I think it was. They were going away from their base of Plant and Page and Bonham, and they got a little. They were kind of drifting a little.
They're doing everything that Lindsay was rebelling against on Tusk.
But you brought up the question. I just had to answer it.
Yeah. Cool. All right, everybody. So Then Play On. Scale of 1 to 10. Time to rank the album. If you want to give it a quick summary, we can do that. Tony, your hand was up. So how do you rank?
Oh, no, I thought you were saying goodbye. That's all.
No, we got to do a scale of 1 to 10. So
scale of 1 to 10, I give it a 9.
A 9? Any closing thoughts?
I think that it's fundamentally a disjointed album, but that's its pleasure. It doesn't feel like it is, especially since we listened to the American version, and that seemed right to me. But when I've listened to the British version, I feel like the band itself didn't even know, like the sequencing list seemed kind of like an afterthought.
Right.
But it doesn't matter. It's so well done that it's just a very eclectic, odd, weird, incredibly good album, great album, and it's I would give it a 9.
It's so interesting because it's looked at as a legendary album, but which version? All of them? Well,
Yeah, yeah.
Alicia, I'm curious. You came into this one, hadn't heard it. What did you think of it?
You there?
I'm here. I'm here. I was hoping he would pick me last, so I would.
Oh, do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, I'll come back to you. Jim Miller, then
Yes.
play on Fleetwood Mac.
I was looking at our old stuff. I was picking up rumors at the end of our I want to see what I ranked rumors, and everybody said 10. And this is all 8. This massive pile of like 18 to 19 songs. This is a 10. A great pile of music, amazing stuff, and it probably influenced a lot of bands everywhere. Like the Santanas, the Allman Brothers, just a lot of rock and roll bands picked through this stuff, and
Yeah.
they have their own take on everything, but great influential music, just amazing era.
All right. Let's go to Sam next.
So, I mean, for me, like subjectively speaking, I would give it a 10. If I'm going to go outside of my body and be a music critic and think of it objectively, I'll probably give it a 10. So that's how I feel about this album. But I think one of the things that actually really resonated with me, which is kind of funny, is I really gripped it when I heard the British version. And I think part of it is one time I did this, I wrote out the key of each song and I went through the list, and I swear they I don't know, maybe I'm just going way off the deep end here or something, but I'm like, this is almost like a chord progression using the keys of the songs. And I really liked how it speeds up, it slows down, it speeds up, it slows down, and it, to me, I think of the whole thing as a very through composed ordeal that needs to be listened to in one sitting. And I agree 100% with you. It is weird having the singles just like slapped on at the end, because those are pieces unto themselves. But I can definitely see how, going back to the first time I listened to it and having Oh Well on there, it's more like a greatest hits, like Peter Green's greatest hits with Fleetwood Mac and Danny Kerwin, because that's essentially all we have of them together on an album. Not because Danny Kerwin's, of course, not on the first 2 records. But anyway, I could talk about it all day. I could go into more detail, and but anyway, that's what I think of it, and it's my desert island record with like Exile on Main Street and Cry of Love by Jimi Hendrix. Those are like my top 3.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you joined us for this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Do you feel like we did Then Play On justice? Did we do okay?
I think that, I mean, I love listening to what other people think about it, because 20 years ago or whatever, nobody was talking about this record at all. Okay. It wasn't until maybe about 2010, and then they had the Rhino reissue, that all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a lost classic. And they got the guy from Rolling Stone to write the liner notes, and Rolling Stone said it was garbage when it came out.
Yeah.
And they fell flat on their faces. I think that's what they wrote, actually.
Yeah, so I mean, that's revisionist history, like that happened. But sometimes, things, they said the same thing about Exile on Main Street. What do we do with this? We don't, like my buddy in the car. He's like, "What is this?" Well, if you're only listening to bits and pieces and not sitting down and consuming the entire thing, in a quiet room with a little bourbon or something, then you might not feel about it the same way that I have experienced it.
Well, I never trust music critics because I will say that Rolling Stone gave Prince's Graffiti Bridge soundtrack 5 stars. So my trust in the critics was lost ever since that point in time. Nick.
Okay.
So I usually don't give out tens unless if I think an album is absolutely perfect with every single song. I think that in one sitting, this album is absolutely terrific. So I will give this probably one of the highest ratings I've given for any album on this podcast, probably a 9.5, 9.6. Before the Beginnings, one of my favorites. I think I did a ranking of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs, and I probably put Oh Well Part 2 as my number one favorite song above
Wow.
any others. It's just so unique. I would consider it to be quite the masterpiece. I love the orchestration. It was Green's first attempt at it, and he did such a good job. I think he, at one point, considered recording an album with some sort of London orchestra, but like many of the ideas that came about during that era, like the Jesus Christ album, it never came to pass. But been curious, like all of you guys were mentioning, what would have happened if they stuck around a little bit longer. But similar to the Beatles, I think it capped off perfectly with them, where they kind of, well, they disbanded at their peak. Led Zeppelin, they didn't really have any bad albums. And then with Fleetwood Mac, then Play On, it's their magnum opus, more or less. Mick
Right.
Fleetwood, I think, has labeled it as his favorite album. Sometimes he'll throw Tusk in there as his 2 favorite albums. And I think it's certainly up there as a classic, one of the best of the late 1960s, probably the 1960s.
And Peter Green was 24.
Yeah,
Jeez.
23, 24 when he left.
Yeah, 24.
And Stevie was 25 when she joined.
Jeez.
He was 28.
Well, I know this is a hot take, but I just can't move past how much I love the American version of this album. I'm looking at this sequence. Coming Your Way, then into the slowness of Closing My Eyes, picked back up with Showbiz. Then you have the 2 instrumentals, then side 1 ends with Oh Well, part 1 and 2. I just remember the first time I heard this in my dad's apartment, the needle going off the wax on side 1. I never heard these songs until this time. And that whole side 1 was just perfect. I know that's not what the band intended, but I don't care. I think that's the perfect sequence. Then you flip over the album, Although the Sun is Shining, a great beginning to side 2. Then into Rattlesnake Shake. Then you have the 2 Madges right next to each other. Then When You Say didn't bother me coming after the Madges. Like, I thought it was a nice palate cleanser. And then you end with Like Crying. And then Before the Beginning. I give that US version a 10, solid 10. I just think it's a perfect album. I don't care who, what, when, where, why the record company put together. This is a perfect album. And that Oh Well at the end of side 1 is a huge hit single. The British version, I just feel like it just doesn't have the same, but you know, I still give it a 9.5.
Well, you're an American, so
Yeah, I'm American. That's right.
yeah.
We
I do
go
think
big
that
when
World
we
in
go
Harmony.
home.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say that I think that World in Harmony actually does serve as a wonderful closing track for the expanded edition. I
Right.
think that Before the Beginning also works well, but if they did decide to choose another closing track, World in Harmony is probably the second best option.
See, this
One of my
damn
favorites.
this expanded version just wore my soul out. Like, it's because you have all the British, all the American, some weird ass sequence all over pell-mell. Then you have the singles at the end.
It's what
All
they
right.
do with the Beatles with like I said, with Revolver and Rubber Soul. So you're getting these albums that's got like 16 tracks on it. You know, it's like,
So for those who are coming into these albums new, perhaps Nick and Alicia, for the rest of this Fleetwood Mac middle era, the albums are not that long. They are very concise. They have the same track list everywhere. The only difference is Future Games had a yellow cover in the UK and a green cover in the United States. I like the green cover better.
It's much better.
Okay, Alicia, I gave you like that Edge of 17 Red Rocks long time to think.
Yeah. My number is just because, unlike you guys, I haven't had time to really digest this.
Right.
This is like a really hot take.
And it's a lot to digest, isn't it? Like, it's a
It
lot.
is. I was impressed with what I listened to. It was definitely something like, wow, okay, this is, I would give it a 7 or 8. Just understand that that's just, if I had more time, or I probably would have, I can give you a better answer, but that's just,
Listen,
I can see how yeah.
listen to the American track list. You know what's funny is Nick will tell you, on the Eurythmics podcast, there's this guy, Jimmy, that never agrees with the sequences of the album, so he always ends the podcast with how he thinks it should have been done. So I'm going to Jimmy it on this one and say it should have been the U.S. track list.
It sounds like the US track list, they did it based on how everything they were looking for the biggest punch.
Right. And some of it was recorded a little bit later, so it didn't even exist, right? Was OL recorded when the original UK album came out, or no? Okay, so that's why it had to be the way it was.
But and then that's also why these last 3, you seem to have a lot of like they were recording, but they were trying to keep up with the pace of them growing and
yeah, you'll find that they were very active for their first 7-8 years. They were able to crank out album after album, sometimes 2 albums in 1 year. And then you fast forward to the 1980s, where between Rumors and Tusk, it's about 2 years. Tusk and Mirage, 3 years. Mirage and Tango, you have a 5-year gap there. I think maybe an 8-year gap between Time and Say You Will. So they're all over the map there.
Well, it took Stevie a lot of energy to get in that studio and croak away. What's the matter, baby? Over.
Well, I think it was her just having to stomach another session with Buckingham
In his bedroom, right? In his bedroom.
For Tango, yes, that was the case.
Well, friends.
Drugged out. I mean, I've been reading because this year's the 40th for Rock a Little, and you just kind of sit there and go, man, she was a mess.
I saw her for Rock a Little.
You did?
Oh yeah, I was 15 years old. And she was in bad shape.
Oh man.
And she took a tambourine and she threw it up in the air and it went backstage. If there was someone in the back walking around, they could have split their head open.
Oh! I have 4 words for 1985 Stevie Nicks. Mabel Normand or the Juliet demo. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah! All right. Well, I went from tired to overtired to not tired anymore, but I'm going to try to mix this down and get it up online tonight. Thank you all so much. Did I cut anybody off too much? Is there anything like really pressing that anyone wants to add?
No, you're wonderful. You're wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, Jim, I know you had something to say, Jim.
I could have threw a wrench in it and added Dragonfly.
Oh!
No, that's for next time.
Yeah,
Isn't that after Kiln House?
It's
Probably.
after
I
House.
think like 73.
Okay.
No, 71.
71.
No more songs. No.
We'll tag on Dragonfly on the next.
And the B-side, right?
Yeah.
Purple
It's just
Dancer.
like a single. I think it was a Rush single,
Yeah.
just to have a psychedelic look to
But
it.
I'm just preparing you. I'm looking forward to Kiln House. It's
I love Kiln House.
Good album.
After the White Album and Rumors, it's my favorite Fleetwood Mac album.
Oh, yeah. Alicia, I'm glad you hung in there because I think you're in for a treat with these albums. There's some good stuff. And Christine's finally deciding to join. She's like, I'll join the fucking band. Why not?
Uncredited, though.
Uncredited, yeah. But she did draw the cover. All right. Well, we meet again in March, my friends. But Happy New Year. Share this with your friends and everything. And I'm going to go to bed after I eat a piece of chocolate. All right. Bye.
All right.
See you.
Thanks.